Buenos Day and good morning, Guam. Welcome to the Guam Congress Hall for this oversight hearing with the Guam Department of Education. The Committee on Education, Public Safety, and the Arts calls this hearing to order at 10:17 Chamorro Standard Time on this Tuesday, July 18th, 2023. Of course, all the appropriate notices were sent and disseminated to all local media outlets on July 11th, 2023, with the second notice provided on July 16th, 2023. Notice of the hearing was also made known on the Guam Legislature's website and the Government of Guam Public Notices portal. This morning, the committee is holding an oversight hearing on the Guam Department of Education's compliance status with Public Law 37-4, an act to renumber and amend subsection 4721 entitled Variance and to add a new subsection B to subsection 4719, all of Division 1, Article 7, Chapter 4, Title 26 of Guam Administrative Rules and Regulations relative to updating sanitation regulations to promote health and safety of GDOE public schools. I'd like to welcome my colleagues joining us today, starting with my Vice Chair of the committee, Senator Chris Duenas. Also Speaker Therese Terlahi, Senator Jess Lujan, Senator Tela Taitagui, and Minority Leader Senator Frank Blaz Jr. General rules of conduct: individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chair before speaking, shall state their name for record-keeping purposes. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character of any senator or individual testifying is not permitted. The chairperson of the committee may order the removal from a hearing any member of a legislatura en Guahan who fails to observe proper decorum pursuant to the legislature's standing rules. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in the removal from the hearing by the host. And I think it's fairly obvious the reason we called this hearing is a status check with compliance efforts being undertaken by the Guam Department of Education relative to compliance with Public Law 37-4. Definitely appreciate your presence here this morning, but more so appreciate the hard work that everybody is doing across the district to help our bring our schools into compliance with the basic safety and sanitation guidelines. I've been around the island, seen how much hard work is being accomplished, and the wheels are rolling, and so we definitely want to get the status update and then set you guys loose to continue the work. And so with that being said, I'd like to recognize the panel before us, to include the new superintendent of the Guam Department of Education. Please welcome Dr. Kenneth Swanson. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Half-a-Day Senator. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I really appreciate the opportunity to provide the update for you. You've probably heard by now I have a mindset that we are all one crew and there are no passengers. I would like to comment that our crew is here. We're on duty and we're doing the job. I want to turn this over to my team, who are really first-hand knowledge in all of the nuts and bolts, so that you can get the information that you need to do your work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator, Mr. Chair, Speaker, and Senators. I apologize. I think they're working on the slideshow, so if you can just go ahead and reference your handout, we'll go ahead and begin. With the agenda today, we'll talk briefly about the public law. I think everyone's kind of familiar with that, but that would kind of be the basis.
Sorry, Joe. Could we get the Sergeant of Arms to swear the panel in, please? My apologies. I hope you were completely honest in your good morning greeting, Mr. Superintendent. Thank you, Sarge.
He's coming. Yeah. Go this way.
You know, they need someone to fix the lights.
Can I have you guys please stand and raise your right hand? Under penalty of perjury, do you all affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Mr. Chair, under oath, you may proceed.
Thank you, Sarge. Was there anybody else from the Guam Department of Education that had planned on providing testimony that we need to swear in? Ms. Zenny? Yeah?
Today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Okay. Mr. Chair, she's under oath. You may proceed.
Phil, did you want to, could we just get everybody from the department to please rise, and just in case, you know what I mean? Thanks, Sarge.
Please raise your right hand.
Please rise. Thank you. All rise.
Please raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, do you all affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Mr. Chair, they're on oath. May proceed.
Thank you very much, Sarge. And now Deputy Superintendent Joe Sanchez. Good morning.
Great, thank you. So again, I apologize, the PowerPoint's not up yet, but we'll go ahead and refer to it when it gets up on the screen. Oh, there you go. So we'll be talking a little bit about the public law 37-4, the status of our public health inspections and how they intertwine with our work for typhoon recovery. Then we'll talk about our determination of school readiness for in-person instruction. I think that's the one that most folks are looking forward to. And then lastly, present our contingency plans for closures, or what we call late starts. So really briefly, I think everyone in the room knows about our Public Law 37-4. It's relative to updating sanitation regulations to promote health and safety of Guam Department of Education public schools. And we just quoted that one sentence, that one statement, where it's Guam Department of Education public schools will come into full compliance by the start of school year 23-24. Now, I know this, not to belabor this point, but just to make sure that everyone's aware, this originally was a deadline of 24-25. So we actually had one more year to come into compliance. And then with this law, it changed it to make the compliance this school year. Now, although the law wasn't passed until a little later in the semester, these are some of the examples of the things that the Department of Education was doing even before the law came into place. One, we had a program with public health that dealt with school safety liaisons. This is where the school safety liaisons were actually trained and were taught how to utilize the checklist to conduct their inspections at their school sites. Basically our self-inspections. From January to April, all schools conducted their assessments and submitted them to Facilities and Maintenance and CIP office. April to now, the demerits and school work were classified into 3 tiers. So this continues to be ongoing. We just received documents from the schools again, the most recent self-inspection, that's July 12th. And all this work is again classified into the 3 tiers. You've heard that ever since Dr. Wampat was here about how we have those different levels, and I'll talk briefly about them in the next slide. So damage assessment for schools post-typhoon, basically what happened is we were able to do several assessments. One was the initial damage assessment, preliminary damage assessments that were submitted again to Central and the Division of Facilities and Maintenance and CIP. And we also added our school readiness reports. So we get schools to list down their facilities issues on a regular basis weekly, so we're able to track those. All of these data sources, we have a full team downtown. We're pulling everybody from all the different divisions, even folks from procurement, folks from curriculum and instructions, folks from personnel, health, and other places to help the schools kind of organize some of this work so that each school has a separate, almost like a project sheet or punch list that facilities and CIP have to work from. These are the tiers, and just excuse me if this feels rushed, but this is information that we've provided, so we're just kind of assuming people are just kind of catching up. But these are the tiers that the work is divided into. Tier 1, and congratulations and thank you to all the schools for the work that they've been doing. These are everything that they can handle at their level. So if they have the materials and supplies, they can do it, they have the capacity. A lot of it has to do with cleaning, a lot of it has to do with, in the case of the typhoon, moving debris around. They were able to be provided with supplies and materials through an open PO, where they can actually get the materials that they need to do this work. Tier 2 adds the next level where it's either facilities and maintenance or other government agencies. So that's where the school can no longer do it by themselves, but they need assistance with central office or they need assistance from other government agencies, and we can give you an update on that work. Tier 3 is beyond the resources of either the school or even the government. So these are all actions that either we need a professional vendor or we need contractors, and really it's out of our hands at this point. You've seen this. This is just some of the examples of the top 10 major items that came out of the storm. Mold, gate entrances and fence lines, exterior doors, roofing, shutters, floor tiles, ceiling tiles, windows, interior doors, and debris throughout the campus. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the update for power and water. So here we're looking at schools have 82%, and we're only counting the schools that have full power. So if a school is reporting partial power, half power, intermittent power, when it goes on and off, we're not counting those. We're only counting schools that are fully up and running. So we're looking at 82%. Water, again, originally we only counted schools that had full water, full pressure. Now we're told that all schools have full pressure, so we're at 100%. Phone, still very low, only 16% have them working, and internet, only 17%. I'm sorry, 41%, 43%. I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Superintendent Erica Cruz, who's our point of contact when it comes to the public health inspections.
Hi, my name is Erica Cruz, Acting Deputy Superintendent for Educational Support and Community Learning. I am the liaison for the Department of Education, working with public health. I meet with them on a weekly basis just to provide input on, or get input on their status of their inspections of our schools. And so we have provided 10 schools. Originally, these 10 schools were listed as principals who wanted their schools to be inspected, but pre or post Typhoon, this listing may change. So the first school that was inspected was Atacao Elementary School, which received a D rating. Interagency Elementary School, which received a C rating, which is passing. John F. Kennedy High School received a D rating, and Maritzo Elementary School passed with a C rating. Currently, they will be starting their inspection of Antolon Middle School today, and that would typically take a week. However, in my conversation with Public Health last week, Friday, once a school hits 41 demerits, they're going to stop the inspection and go to a different school to help expedite the inspections of schools. And then they will return to the schools and re-inspect and complete their inspections of the other schools. But once it hits 41, they're going to stop their inspection. Do you have any questions regarding that? Okay. Okay, so as far as Typhoon recovery for schools and public health inspections, we had items of major demerits on public health inspections or self-inspections, and these are the big ticket items. We have 1 demerit, 2 demerits, 3 demerits. The largest demerit is 6 demerits, and those are the ones that can potentially close a school. And so as we reviewed our data from our school inspections, mechanical ventilation was 1. Room temperature, meaning air conditioning, was not working in the classrooms. Lighting, there was a lack of diffuser or sleeves. And then drinking fountains, there weren't adequate number of drinking water fountains. And then waste containers, soap dispensers, and paper towels were absent in the restrooms. And then just restrooms overall was just the cleanliness of the restrooms.
Great, thank you, Erica. On the next slide, we just want to spend some time with this. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Shaman Forte. He's the manager for food and nutrition, but he's been assisting us with our work regarding facilities and maintenance. So he's kind of taking the lead on this. What we want to show with the next slide is although these are major items, these are the 6 items that will give you 6 demerits. So they're considered big ticket items. But we want to show kind of the status on the work that we are doing to address those particular items.
Hi, my name is Sean Monforti, Food and Nutrition, but also liaison for the Facilities and Maintenance Division for the safety inspections and PDAs and a few other things. So we're looking at, these are the ones that give us an automatic 6 points. We're talking about the mechanical ventilation and at the lease schools for JFK and Atticao. We're also talking about the room temperatures. If the room temperatures are not corrected from the ACs at 72 degrees, we're going to get an automatic 6 points. The lighting is the one that's giving us the biggest headache because if you look up and you have a glare, you get a 6 points. But if you have the diffuser and the sleeves on it, and you look up and there's no glare, then you get a demerit because it's not bright enough. So, and then we have the other one we are having problems with right now is in the bathrooms. The toilet dispensers, the hand soaps, the paper towels, they're not to standard yet. But we do have our maintenance contract, or not our maintenance contract, but our custodial contract addressing that. And then with the restrooms, we have our open POs now. We have our self-help open. We have some extra money coming in through our POs. We have all those open. So we are making big headway now. So we are also going to go a step further by, me and my team are also going out there to the schools that are coming up, getting what they need, ordering it in, having it delivered at the school. So we have our teams ahead now and just waiting. So I think we got a pretty good template and everything is looking good for the upcoming inspections. There's something, we have our pest control contract now too, that wasn't mentioned, but it's coming out, so that's gonna help us with any of the other bugs. But other than that, we know where our deficiencies are falling with public health. We know we're trying to get in front of it, and hopefully we continue with the last 2 schools passing. So I'm confident that we're going to pass again at the next 2 schools for sure. So, thank you.
Great, thank you, Sean. So again, with this particular slide, we just wanted to report out that we are definitely well aware of the items that are the major ticket items, the 6 points, that if you get 3 or 4 of these items, you're not going to pass. I mean, JFK didn't pass by, I think it was 19 points. So if we were able to correct at least 4 of these or get a variance on these 4s, we actually would have passed. We do have variances that we've submitted for all of these items because our position to public health is that we recognize that these are items that are important. But, quite honestly, if you look at it, is it really something that would keep a school closed? Is it really something that, is a detriment to the health and safety of our students? And plus the fact that there are efforts being done here. Like, for example, the AC contract is in the works right now. We're looking at getting that done within the next couple of weeks. The lighting diffusers, we're purchasing those. With the drinking fountains, those were really just filters that were not replaced, so we have the filters for those. We're getting those replaced. We are working with our contractors. They're being very supportive, so the ones who work with the lease schools as well as the ones who work with our regular schools are in charge of the waste containers, soap dispensers, and paper towels, so they are aware. They have committed to supporting this effort. And of course, our restrooms, our facilities folks are making minor repairs and small repairs to get them up and running, but we have a major contract set up with the refurbishment, which includes the leaking roofs, the canopies, restrooms, as well as electrical work. Here again, I just want to recognize the work of the schools with Tier 1 because they're really making an effort on this. If you look at some of our schools, I haven't seen all the schools, but I've been told that many of them are now, they're almost spotless, where it's really just the work of the teachers, work of the staff, work of the administrators, and I know we have interns there. So we have some folks who have really taken this Tier 1 effort seriously and kept their schools clean. So that way, we can really just focus on the things that they can't handle, the Tier 2 items and anything that's required of either the F&M staff or other government agencies. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Chris Anderson, who's actually our administrator for Student Support Services. But again, like I said, this is all hands on deck. Everyone's helping out, and he's been our liaison with Homeland Security for Typhoon recovery, and now he's kind of expanded that role to a liaison to the other government agencies. Mr. Anderson?
Good morning, Senators. Aside from the great work being done by our Facilities and Maintenance Division to address Tier 2 work, one other important task in this category is the debris removal. So as mentioned in the last roundtable discussion, we mentioned that the Governor Leon Guerrero had established a debris task force comprised or led by Dominic Muña from Port Authority, but also members from Guam EPA, US EPA, FEMA, the Army Corps of Engineers, and most especially the Guam National Guard. They've been at the tip of that spear working with us to try and remove typhoon-related debris. As of yesterday's debris task force meeting, the Guard briefed that they have completed 23 out of 41 schools, and so we're making some progress. They are going to end their mission at the end of this week, but we're hopeful that they'll be able to remove all the typhoon-related debris streams from the schools. One thing that we're working with right now with the Army Corps of Engineers is because of, again, the limited window for the Guard to be able to help the schools completely move the debris from their facilities to the TDMS locations, these temporary debris staging locations, is to help move the debris to the right-of-ways. So we've been working with the mayors to make sure that they're aware of this mission, but the intent is to, again, get the debris off the school facilities, put them on a right-of-way right outside the school facility. And then the Army Corps of Engineers has 2 contractors working from the north and the south to then come and secure all that debris and then remove it from the communities. There's also a department-led mission, also by Facilities and Maintenance, referred to as Baligasgas. This mission is annual, and the focus on this mission is to remove debris that's not typhoon-related, primarily surveyed items, but definitely something that the schools need help with to ensure that they don't have surveyed items in their facilities and to help put them in a better position to pass their inspections. The other important task I have with the School Readiness Task Force for the department is to liaison with Homeland Security. Also referenced in the previous roundtable discussion were several requests through the DLAN system for support. I spoke with Charles Esteves from the Office of Civil Defense, and they mentioned that last week they were almost ready with their IFB for mold mitigation. So we're optimistic that that project will get off the ground very soon so that we can get support to the schools. Another area that the schools have indicated support for is in fencing. A lot of the perimeter fencing around our school facilities were damaged from the typhoon, and so we're trying to get the civil defense, hopefully with the Guard, to be able to take the lead with at least the labor to try and repair or replace cyclone fencing areas that need to be helped or fixed. We also requested from Homeland Security for different labor sets or trade areas to support and augment the work being done by our Facilities and Maintenance. So we do have a request for various trades areas like electricians, plumbers, welders, masons, etc., again, to try and support the work of our Facilities and Maintenance Division. We also asked for support for the move. As mentioned, I think in the previous roundtable discussion, there is going to be a need for Simon Sanchez to be able to double session with another school, and so we requested for the Guard to assist with the labor to try and help make that as seamless and expeditious as possible. And then also working with the folks that are at the Emergency Operations Center for GPA and GWA to try and get in there and try and make sure that our schools don't have any issues. The water issue actually is 100%, but it's our power that seems to be a challenge. We still have several schools that have either partial or no power at all. And we thank GPA for working with us to try and get in there and figure out what the issues are and get the campuses fully energized. And that's all I have at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Status of our Tier 3 work. We're moving forward with all of our capital improvement projects. These were projects that were already in place prior to the typhoon and even prior to the public health inspections. These are mostly work that's funded through the ARP. We talked about different types, but just to go over the main ones, air conditioning. This is a huge one that we've been waiting for several months, I think even years. But we're at the point where the vendor is to be selected. So once that vendor gets selected, we're going to definitely work on an expedited schedule to get them out to the schools. The school renovations, these are the big ticket items, the roofing leaks, canopies and walkways, restrooms, and electrical work. We do have additional requests, as Chris noted, for mold mitigation and fence lining. However, in the last item, we're still looking for additional funding to address items like ceiling and floor tiles. We were able to allocate funding for that. That's a major item throughout the entire school system. So we are purchasing ceiling and floor tiles. Mold, again, we are just double checking to make sure if we have some funding on the side. We know that funding was provided through I believe it's the $20 million that was actually given to DOE, but is now with Homeland Security, and they'll be tapping on that to address our mold needs. But again, we're just checking to make sure that we have additional funding in case that doesn't fall through. Fencing, plumbing and electrical work. So the plumbing in particular is sewage. So we actually have 6 schools that have been identified to possibly need sewage support and not just regular restroom fixes. And then again, electrical is being assessed at this time, but we do have some reports of some schools that need additional electrical work that goes beyond what do they call it, the breakers, where they go from the pole to my ignorance is showing. But whatever comes from the power pole to the system, and then now it's into the classroom. So there's 6 schools that have been identified to need some additional electrical support in the classrooms and other areas. So here is I guess the area that a lot of folks continue to look at. It's a determination of school readiness. So just know that there's an ongoing back and forth where we communicate with the schools, where they submit their assessment reports. We look at it down at Central, and then right now we're compiling, all of the schools and making sure that each school has a separate project sheet to address their particular needs. And tomorrow, again, is one of our regular weekly meetings with the principals, where we pretty much have everybody there discussing what our status is and all of these different bullet points. So in consultation with the school principals and the F&M staff, schools were classified, as you know, into 3 phases relative to their readiness for opening for in-person instruction. Our intent is if in-person instruction is not possible, we would actually go online and provide some type of instruction, or even a paper-based type curriculum for students if we're not able to provide in-service or in-person instruction. So this was updated from a couple of days ago. This is as of yesterday. Again, we confirm with every school, and sometimes schools will have to change when certain things become clarified and whatnot. So there were some changes. Also, just to confirm, we are only using 39 schools, so we're tracking the 39 campuses that we're using. So we're not counting Simon Sanchez right now. We're not counting FB. So when you see the statistic, you're seeing readiness in terms of whether or not the school is ready to open wherever they're physically at. So phase 1, again, as you know, is they're either able to open August 9th or no more than 2 weeks later. We're looking at 14 schools. Phase 2 is 3 weeks to up to 2 months later, and you're looking at 13 schools at 33%. And phase 3 is the biggest one, and we're going to definitely meet with the phase 3 schools to kind of talk through some of the major work that they need, but that we're projecting to be 3 months or later before they can open for in-person instruction. I'm not going to kind of read out each school, but you can see the schools where they're at right now. You're looking at phase 1. These are the schools that have been identified as phase 1 schools. Phase 2 schools are here. And again, I believe if it did not get out yesterday, I believe later on today, there will be an updated press release going out. And these are...
Can you say that again, Joe? Sorry.
Yeah, if it didn't get out on a press release yesterday, it will be coming out today.
What will?
This information. Yeah, the phases. So with the list
These
of
are
schools.
updated lists.
These are updated
Thank
lists,
you.
yes. and phase 3. So there's some important points to note based on, based on just kind of our discussions for the readiness projections. So the projected readiness date is independent of the inspection date. So we're really working with public health to kind of tighten that up. So if you're looking at the next 10 schools that are going to be inspected, those will coincide with phase 1 because that's part of the claim that's being made. So if we're not able to open, the schools will be ready to open, but then we'll have to wait for every inspection to actually take place. So we are aligning it to their anticipated date of inspection. Projected readiness date is your intended location or campus. So for example, we have 2 schools that are going double session right now. FBLG, we're no longer counting that campus until it gets refurbished, but they're at Ukuru, so we're counting them as one school. Simon Sanchez, as you know, we're not counting that campus either, so they're at JFK for their double session. And if other schools are planning for double session, what we mean by that is, as you know, online full-time is our last resort. So we're really trying to push the issue where if, let's say, a school gets inspected and they're open, right? They pass and then they're open. If there's a school nearby that either hasn't got inspected or we know it's not going to be in phase 1 or gets inspected and fails, we're going to work with them to see if a double session is possible with that school. So we're really trying to look at ways to see that if we can avoid 100% online for every single school. Readiness to open is based on our best estimate. I know that there's, kind of a lot of pressure pulling us in different direction. They're asking us to, can you hurry up and tell us? At the same time, it's like, hey, if we make a mistake, it's bad that we make a mistake. So just know that the schools and Central are really trying to look at all the different factors because the projection is really based on the amount of work that needs to be done, the type of work that needs to be done, because we're at the mercy of, procurement and making sure that we're able to get these contracts in place. And I really just want to emphasize, when we say procurement, we're not just talking about the office, because as you know, before you place the order, that's still part of the procurement process. So sometimes there's scopes of services that need to be developed. Sometimes there's clarifications in the requisition that needs to be done. So I don't want to kind of give the impression that it's just the procurement office when we say procurement is going to be a challenge over the next couple of weeks. So it's really identifying the specific orders, identifying the funding, and getting it through the entire process. So again, all of those factors go into coming up with a date where we think we can be able to open. Tier 3 items do not automatically mean a school can't open, right? So I know a misconception was that, oh my God, if you have Tier 3 items, you're not going to be able to open. Well, Tier 3 items are actually prevalent throughout the entire district. So an example I'm giving is canopies. Yes, canopies are a Tier 3 item because that requires contractual work to be done. However, when you look at it, are we going to lose a lot of points off of the canopies? No, we're not. And is it going to cause a safety hazard? Probably not. Kids will get wet when they're walking to a classroom, but that's not something that will necessarily keep a school from opening. So some of our recommendations to support in-person learning, we obviously know, and everybody here, the principals are here and they can kind of share their experiences, but we all know that the first goal is to pass the public health inspection. Every single person in the district is taking that very seriously. When it comes to their turn, they're taking that very seriously. They're pushing Central. We're trying to get the purchase orders out. So everything we can to get our schools to pass is being done. These demerits, especially for those areas that have the large-scale demerits. But we really think, and again, this is a value discussion, like some people might not disagree, but we really have to take a look at what those demerits are and whether or not we think it's sufficient enough to keep a school closed. Because as you know, keeping students out of school is a challenging thing, right? So if we're looking at demerits that may not be directly health and safety, and yes, they may cause demerits, but it's something that we can discuss further. So here are some of our examples. Review and approve the submitted variances. So we have submitted variances for areas that it's beyond our control right now. For example, a school, if they're missing ceiling tiles, You know, we have ceiling tiles under order, but from our understanding, there's not enough ceiling tiles throughout the entire island. But we have the money, we have the purchase orders, we just need to give vendors time to get the ceiling tiles on island. So that's one of our variances where we're asking, hey, can you not ding us for that, knowing that we are committed to getting those things done. Same thing with air conditioning. Air conditioning, our contract is just about signed. We just need a few more steps. But you know, that's an area that we're asking not to ding us on that. I mean, the students went to school in hot classrooms for the last 2 years. You know, next couple of months probably won't kill them, right? But again, that's a value statement. Some people might not agree with that, but you know, we're asking for air conditioning and things like that not to be counted. Second recommendation is anything that we can do to support public health and their ability to conduct more inspections at a given time or approve a process for expedited inspections. I mean, again, we have a really good relationship with public health, so we're not saying they're not doing their job and we're not kind of complaining about the work that they do, but you know, unfortunately, doing one school a week is just not enough. And that really puts us in a situation. So I don't know if we can get more inspectors or somehow expedite the process. I know Deputy Cruz talked about one of the options that they're using. So anything along those lines. Third, support Homeland Security and any other government agency supporting DOE in its efforts. So inclusive of funding, personnel, or procurement authority. We're just kind of throwing that out there. And then the last one, I know that there's a procurement bill that's up this afternoon, so I think we might bring this up again, but possibly increasing the dollar threshold for emergency procurement and small purchases meant to address school readiness for opening for in-person instruction. I'll give you an example. We only know of one vendor that has a substantial amount of, ceiling tiles right now. So we said, can we just buy all the ceiling tiles on island, literally, like we're not kidding. When we say buy everything, we have the money, we just need it all. And the challenge that we're running into is the cost of buying all the tiles exceeds the $250,000 threshold for emergency procurement, which means we would have to go through a full procurement, which will take time, or just figure out, maybe just buy a smaller number. And then see, you can't buy a smaller number and then keep buying a smaller number. As you know, that's a procurement issue again. So really, we're asking that emergency procurement threshold be increased so that way we can buy some of these large-scale items. That would go the same for those diffusers and the shields, is we want to buy everything literally on island, but the cost is going to be over the amount that we have for a small procurement. Now, I think I want to leave the floor for questions, but all of these other items after us, we've already presented before to the legislature, we've presented to communities. So yeah, it's like 3 or 4 more slides, but I don't think we need to go through those specifically. But we do have a plan to address any model of, is it instruction, online instruction, or double sessions. We have teams set up to support students, parents, teachers, and their families. So, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Did you have the survey results that you wanted to share before we get into the questions?
I think Dr. Zenny? She did bring it. We weren't going to present it, but
Okay, that's
yeah.
fine. Yeah, that's cool. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for all this information. I'm very encouraged that total online is the last resort and that you guys are really moving to get as many schools opened as possible so that we have a bigger pot of schools to work with relative to consolidating campuses for double session or whatnot. But there are a couple of issues I kind of want to start with. I've been getting a lot of complaints from parents and other stakeholders about their ability to access school campuses for things like transferring students, enrollment, all that type of thing. And I actually visited a school and it was gated off. The gate was closed. And I know I've seen stuff from you guys where you're telling parents of Ukuru go to a Stumbo gym, or for example at Agata they go to the old mayor's office. Can you give us more information on this policy?
Yeah, so it's actually not our policy. It's actually, do you want to go ahead and explain? Oh, sorry, yeah, so it's with the closure or the expiring of the sanitary permits, what we're told from public health is that we're only allowed on campus for the purpose of addressing the law and addressing, the public health inspections. So which means we can't function on campus as a school. So we can't do registration, they can't even be on the campus to do scheduling, we can't have meetings on campus. Teachers cannot go out into their classrooms they can go into their classroom to
Unless
clean,
they're cleaning.
but really that's all we're left with. So I believe we are putting in I don't even know if it's a variance, but we're putting in a request to public health to reconsider that, because we do know that if that stands and we do have to go online, we're kind of put in a really almost ridiculous situation where some schools are literally right outside their gate with a pala and the table, and
They wouldn't, I mean, let's go back to this conversation that you had when public health informed you of this policy. You didn't ask, could we go in the parking lot maybe? Would
Yes,
that also
we
be a
did.
violation?
And so the response was anything that's within the perimeter of the fence is a school. It's part of the school, so we are not allowed to be even in the parking lot to conduct any form of business, only relative to Public Law 37-4.
And so that being said, what type of reaction have you got from parents, and how has it impacted these things that they would normally do on the campus?
It's a great impact. Right now, we have schools going to shopping centers to do registration. And so we got Lagu, who is scheduled to be over at Micronesia Mall, registering students and answering parents' questions, as well as Cutton, who will be over at, again, a shopping center doing the same. So it is hampering the operations of our school, besides addressing the public health inspections.
Right. Do you have that in writing? If you have that in writing, I'd like it to be provided to the committee.
I'll get that.
Okay. And then I just want to say for the record, again, I'm very encouraged by the amount of work that's been done, and in talking to a lot of the stakeholders, to include administrators at the school level. And we're going to have another oversight before the start of the school, because I feel like things are moving very quickly, and we have this opportunity, I'll call it, where you have a lot of schools that are in phase 2, but in talking with some of the principals and the stakeholders at the school level, they really believe that they're a little bit of this, a little bit of that away from moving to phase 1. And I think the challenge is going to be for us to get as many schools, obviously, right, as we can over into phase 1, so that we can hopefully avoid online in all circumstances, or minimize the amount of online learning that we can do. So, that
Yeah.
being said,
And that's the hope, is to
right.
get most of our schools on phase 1. That's why we have our facilities and maintenance crew, as well as our school administrators and their school communities, such as their PTO, their government sister agencies, helping to work on these areas that need to be worked on relative to public health inspections. And then I just wanted to, with the telephone, what % are we on telephone? That's why they're not able to probably get in contact with.
Right, I saw you,
We only have about 41% of our telephones working at our schools.
right, and so you're having
Just to let
parents
you
trying to
know.
call the school and no one's
Yeah,
answering the phone.
Because it's
right.
41%.
Correct.
And just to let you know about the phases 2, you're right. The schools are being very conservative because they don't want to be in an upper phase and then have to switch down. They'd rather be like, okay, I'll be phase 2, and then later if we can get to phase 1, we'll do that. Same thing with phase 3 is I'm just gonna say phase 3, and then we try to move up. Also, with even some of the phase 3 schools, they have already offered us some other possible mitigation efforts. I'll give you an example. I won't name the school, but one school said, it's really just the plumbing and the restrooms. And we're working on that option of getting those temporary restrooms.
Yeah.
They're called.
I think I know what school you're talking about. And
Yeah,
so
and they're
this,
saying if you can get that for us, we can
Right.
stay open.
Yeah.
Or one school saying.
well,
if
let
you
me
can
just
double
announce it
session with
here. That's a
themselves.
central school. It's my alma mater.
Yeah,
And
me
they
too.
basically need,
Yeah.
the sewer line needs to be repaired. And it's not a major fix, because I was told by the administration at the school that if they were able to combine their open POs, they would have enough money to address it. But the concern was that they're having to wait for the department to send out the bid as a whole that you said would cover 6 schools. So if there's anybody out there who can assist this school, Agata Johnston, with the repair of the sewer line, please get a hold of the Guam Department of Education, and let's make that happen. So I wanted to ask, since we have, and really I feel like we still don't have a clear picture on how many schools we're going to have available for double session, or those types of things, because of the key component of the inspections. And I was very encouraged by the governor had written a letter over the weekend, and she had said that she's working feverishly with the Department of Public Health and Social Services to ensure that the Guam Department of Education gets the support that it needs. But in conversation with you yesterday at the budget hearing, you had informed me that they were only going to be able to inspect 3 more schools, which is, like you had said, an average of 1 school per week. Given that new information came out from the Office of the Governor over the weekend, have you had any new conversation or new information to share about this feverish work that's happening?
No, we have not.
Okay, so we'll be sure to follow up on that. But that is key. So you guys have done, and I want to commend you again, because you guys have done the hard work of tiering these schools and making sure that we can have as many open and operational by the start of the school year. And it is being hampered by these shortages, right? But you're continuing to do the work. Okay. And so I think when we come back in a couple weeks, we'll definitely have a clearer picture about which schools, and hopefully these inspections will be able to ramp up. The variances will be addressed. I'll write some letters, and again, I just got to commend you guys for doing that hard work, right? And I know that a lot of people are worried about online, and let's just talk about that, because it was on the front page of one of the papers this morning that online seems unavoidable. Could you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, I would say it's purely logistics. If you don't have a school that's allowed to even function as a school, right now at this point, the only other option, well, I guess the other option is just opening late, as in pushing everything back. I mean, we've all been in school, during previous typhoons where the school system doesn't open for weeks or even months, right? But I think we're a different generation now. Like, for example, I don't think people will accept, oh, just don't open the schools for 2 months. I mean, there are some students who could go online. The students who don't do well online still can go on a little bit. So I think there's a public expectation that you do something. You're not going to close for 2 months and not do anything, right? So really, that burden is on us to say, okay, if we can't open physically, what are our other options? Now, we are looking at, I know you mentioned to us yesterday, alternate sites. So we are looking at some potential alternate sites. We did check some of the Catholic schools a few months ago, but we're going to do that again. We know that there was one charter school that closed down a couple of months ago or years ago, so we're going to check those schools. But again, even if those schools were to come up and running, those would only be 3 campuses that we could possibly use. And the problem with a lot of spaces, I know someone brought up the mall. I don't know who brought that up, but someone said the mall. The problem is it's the only buildings that can function as schools or designed to function as schools are schools, right? They have offices, they have restrooms in places, they have rooms that are a certain size. So really, to find real estate at this point outside of the Department of Education would really be tough. I do know that I think someone, if I'm not mistaken, checked with the former, one of the former Dodea schools, and that was not available. That's going to be used for something else. So really, we're kind of in a situation where the only schools we can use are the schools that pass inspection, which we get. I mean, we get it. We want to pass inspection. But right now, the only 2 schools are Interagency and Maritzo, which presumably, if one of them failed, they would have double sessioned with each other, right? But, we haven't even talked about Talafofo or other schools double sessioning with them at this point. But really, we're limited to right now just 2 schools. So every time a new school would come on board, that would potentially open up another option for us.
And I think we, we talk about facing the fear of online. I think that because the subject of total online learning was brought up very early on in the GDOE town halls, obviously it's caused a lot of anxiety and frustration. I mean, not just with parents, but with the teachers and administrators as well, because I agree. I mean, I think we should avoid online at all costs. But I think what caused a lot of the frustration and the uncertainty was maybe people weren't aware of just how long, if we went to online, just how long we would go online. Because like I said, it seems like there's a lot of moving parts, and you could have a school that maybe is not ready to open on August 9th. And then if that school, because there's a lack of campuses to double session or whatever, has to go online, but then is ready to be inspected in 3 weeks to 2 months, then, hypothetically, they could open.
Yeah, agreed. And I know that we talked a little bit about this yesterday, where the intent is for not to have them go online as long as we did during COVID. It's really have them go online until they get inspected, and hopefully if they pass inspection. And you're right, if they do pass inspection, we've already started to chart this out on the island, but it's not perfect for every school. But there are clusters of schools that could possibly overlap very easily. For example, Agani Heights and CL Titano, if they need to share campuses at one point, they can do that. Same thing with like JQ San Miguel and Carbalito, maybe they could share. So we've already started looking at potential partners, but the idea is if they do go online, they would only go online as long as they need to. And once they get inspected and hopefully they pass, they would be able to open. And again, part of that is, again, this is not meant to put pressure on public health or criticize how they look at the variances, but really when you look at the variances that we've identified, at least the top 6, there's plans to address those already in the works.
Yeah.
And if you really look at them and you go on the campus, like JFK, for example, if you were to walk into JFK, there's nothing in JFK that would make you think they could not pass. But they just didn't. There a couple of rooms didn't have ventilation, a couple of rooms didn't have air conditioning.
And
restrooms.
I'm hearing the doors were put on backwards or something, right? Yeah.
Yes. So really.
Which, I mean, meant that the building inspection and all the other work that was done when JFK was built and open for school, they missed that all these years. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to get that on the record again, that just for those listening, when we talk about online, it really is just a stopgap, short-term learning mode change until the school is ready to open. And based on your own phases, which you said are conservative, some of these phase 2 schools could be ready. I was talking to one principal by Labor Day, which is, 3 weeks past the opening date. So I did want to get that out there because I feel like when we started talking about online, of course, muscle memory, people went straight back to COVID and what a nightmare that was, right? And I don't think that we're talking about, I would say, I don't think any campus is going to be forced to endure online for the entire semester. If we continue the momentum of the work that we're doing and we continue to get the schools ready, and then, we'll handle the public health part and discuss with them, sit down with them maybe how we can, and the governor obviously, how we can move that forward. But let's just keep that momentum going because like I said, I think that online learning, if it does rear its ugly head, is again only going to be something in the short term
It's meant to be a
that we
limited
use to
period.
reach the long-term goal, and I know you all agree, is to get our kids to go to school in facilities that just meet the safety and sanitation guidelines so that the teachers can focus on teaching and the students can focus on learning. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to my colleagues, starting with my Vice Chair, Senator Chris Duenas.
Sidus Masti, Mr. Chairman, and I just wanted to echo what the chairman's been saying. With my communications with many folks that are working very, very hard within the school system to get everything up and running, certainly there's a major, major task that is being accomplished, and I wanted to thank each and every one of you and your teams for getting to this point. First of all, I wanted an update, if I can go to you, Frank. Yesterday we discussed, and this is very important, and I'm going to lay out why. If you look at the Tier 1 and Tier 2 schools, and particularly what is one of the biggest impediments from a Tier 2 going to Tier 1, 5 of the items listed here are things that can be accomplished by making sure that that $20 million is immediately available so that these things can be done. Just to go over it once again: mold, gate and entrance, exterior doors, interior debris throughout the campus. All of these, and 3 of these items, I want to make sure that everybody understands, 3 of these items actually are reimbursable, meaning that FEMA's calling on these things to be the priority, meaning that that $20 million that we're going to spend of our local funds is not going to take away from the $20 million available, because it's going to be reimbursed to the government of Guam. So I cannot overemphasize how much, Frank, to please get an update on your correspondence with Department of Administration, the governor's office, to ensure that that $20 million, as passed by Public Law 37.5, which is the public law that's right after 37.4. So we wanted to make sure you had monetary resources too to accomplish the mission that we put out in order to be able to happen. So Frank, can you update us on that, please?
Sure. Thank you, Senator. So just to give a background of what occurred and how we went about the approach and access to the $20 million, on June 12, 2023, our then acting superintendent, Dr. Judy Wampat, did send a formal request to draw on the $20 million for 3 specific items. Number 1, it was for the motor abatement and remediation. We estimated that cost at $6.8 million. And then number 2, it was for the replacement of physical damages of the school facilities, to include damage in roofing structures, collapsed ceiling panels, broken window glasses, broken doors and jambs, damaged electrical wirings, damage in collapsed wall due to the strong winds, damaged water pipes and fittings, and then damaged perimeter fencing. And then lastly was the cost associated with the various services related to subject matter experts and the additional manpower to perform and work during the shelter duty. So a couple critical things there, as you just mentioned, is one was having the access to the local funds to get access to FEMA reimbursable funds, which is why we immediately went in and sought the funds necessary to get our payment to the schools for the support, not only for the manpower during the storm, but for the immediate damage assessment needs that we were already seeing coming down to Central. And then secondly was to free up that extra additional fundings necessary, understanding the nature of and the timing of where we're at in terms of school readiness and opening. So currently we are going to make a follow-up. I'm sitting right next to our superintendent now. I do have on the record another documentation that will be submitted to get access to the $20 million.
I want to be abundantly clear that when we passed a recent law to give the executive branch the ability to use $50 million in authorized funding, none of that, nowhere in that public law was it listed that this would be inclusive or exclusive of the $20 million that we passed into law. So that $50 million should be able to be used to accomplish that $20 million that's required, and that can help you fast track everything and the hard work that you're doing right now. And I cannot overemphasize once again, all reimbursable, coming back to the government of Guam. So we can use money that's been allocated for that reason to do it. Secondly, in a roundtable after the Typhoon, I mentioned and we discussed, because we knew at the time the Simon Sanchez principal had indicated that that school was massively devastated by the storm, and of course that came to fruition. I asked a question about Teadsden High, and I see that Teadsden High is a Tier 1 school. And I was told by the principal at the time during that roundtable, we can go back to the tape, that there are 9 buildings that are currently unoccupied, not being used. I want to get on the record whether or not that remains to be true. And I'm sure the superintendent's had an opportunity to review which schools are under leaseback. This is a leaseback school, which is completely funded and is independent. So they should be able to handle their own procurement issues or whatever else it is to ensure that that school is operational. So can we?
I can answer. The whole campus is being utilized.
Okay.
So, yeah, there aren't 9 buildings that are not being used. The whole campus is being utilized.
Okay, so we'll go back to the tape then. That must have been an error in terms of when I asked the question, and it was indicated that there were 9 buildings that were not being used. So as of today, all buildings on Teadsden High are completely being utilized. That's correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, then that's off the table then. It's good to learn.
Right.
So going on to the next, what I'm seeing here is really, I think this is kind of going back to what the chairman had already asked. Really, the Tier 2 schools appear to be very, very close, Joe, to being able to move into Tier 1. But I think the problem we're going to have here is the inspections. I want to lay out the fact that when the prior superintendent and interim, everything that we're seeing here today is absolutely bearing out the plan that you had laid in place. All the tiers, all the work that was being done, everything that was being put together in terms of how to accomplish this goal as you're moving forward. So I guess the follow-on to that would be, from the inspections that you had, of your self-inspections going back, could you, maybe in the next week or so, can you give us a kind of an overview of what the Tier 2 schools look like based on your self-assessments? Because that was also what the former superintendent indicated to us, that the hard part of the work that would be done, along with the work that was being accomplished to get the schools up, would be the schools having their own self-inspections to kind of know what's going to happen if public health were to show up. And I think, you know, Sean indicated it too. I mean, so many things that are moving now can fast track, and once again, that 20 million can get those supplies there to these schools. So I would put this ask out to you, Joe. Can you at least take us with the Tier 2 schools on self-inspection a week from now on what your assessment would be if public health were to show up?
Yeah, so actually we do have the self-inspections that were just submitted sometime last week. We're putting them into a spreadsheet. One is to get their total number of demerits, right? Because you always start off with the kind of the overarching piece of data. And then we're looking at, in particular, the 6 main items. Right now, it's the 1-point items. Yeah, they're hard to deal with, but you know, they add up a lot, but they also kind of subtract very little. So we're really looking at the top items that are 6 points or 4 points. And the 6-point items are the ones that we mentioned there. So we're really trying to identify those first to see what can be addressed. And, you know, to be honest, sometimes those ones are just knucklehead ones that we're really telling the schools, please do your best to take care of the Tier 1 stuff. Like, for example, what do you call it, a deodorizer or something like that. You're not allowed to have artificial scents, right, in the room, right, or air fresheners. Well, just stop bringing air fresheners to the school. You know, I mean, geez, we're killing ourselves with all of these little things. So those 1-point items, you know, we're trying to take care of, but it's really those big ticket items that we're most concerned with. It's either we get the resources to them, like the ceiling tiles. A lot of our schools, in fact, the next school that's being inspected, their biggest issue is ceiling tiles, is we're gonna get dinged on that, you know. Flooring tiles might need a little bit more time because those take time to install, but then that, trash cans, making sure that we have the right number of trash cans, getting those filters into the fountains. So all of those things that we can take care of within the next couple of weeks, we're really pushing to get those done. So that's what you're alluding to, is actually trying to get those Tier 2 schools to Tier 1 as soon as we can.
Because it just seems to me, with the possibilities of the breakdown of the schools between 1 and 2, and possibly being able to move up a 3 within a couple of weeks, maybe 1 or a couple of those, you're basically in the double session realm, you know, in terms of your overall student population. So, you know, you're really there, and I just think that we should not underestimate the kind of work that's being done and the capabilities that are there with how close you are and so many things. So I'll close with this, Joe, and with the superintendent and the team. I think it's really important that we also make sure we keep up on the correspondence, because I'm going to go ahead and make a value judgment, whether it dings me or puts me in a good category or whatever. But I think if you do have full procurement of items that all you're waiting for is delivery and installation, I really would like to see you, Joe, just get an email correspondence with Public Health Inspection Division on that, simply because I think that it's kind of unreasonable to think that you've got everything procured, you've got it in motion, and you're waiting for delivery and installation, to get a school. And along with this, maybe I'm going to go a little further. I don't just want to put out a suggestion. If it's meaningless, then throw it away. But it also seems like in that situation on these schools that are so close, you can section off, you know, even if you're operating only 60% of the school. But that can pass, you know, to where you use the rest of the school that we got 20 classrooms we're not going to use. But we can bring all of these other classrooms and this section of restrooms up, and it can handle your student population as well. Because if you're going to get dinged and demerited on the whole school, but you got, you know, 60% of your school that would operate, I think we're all pretty much common sense. We all live in a house where probably we have a room that's not the best room in the house, or, you know, maybe there's a bathroom that's really not up to standard and whatever else, and most of us just avoid that and use mom and dad's master bathroom.
So we do have school administrators that are doing that they're cording off certain school classrooms that are not being utilized, submitting a memo to public health to let them know, and then also on their school map indicating that those classrooms are not being used.
Thank you, Erica. And I just think the correspondence really will kind of show a maintenance of effort, you know what I mean, between the two organizations, because I can't imagine how demoralizing it must be, you know, Sean and your team and all the folks here, to be in a school working 10, 12 hours a day, bringing your own supplies, you know, probably bringing in your own toolbox and everything else. And if you can change a lock, you're changing a lock or doing what you can, you know, only to have an entire campus be shut down based on demerits that, you know, 60, 70% of the classrooms and the cafeteria has been taken care of and other things are set. And, you know, your entire team's just being deflated and let down because of the fact that you got things on order that's going to demerit you. You have a situation whereby you have so many operational classrooms. I'm very disappointed with this, you know, locking the schools off campus. I think that's a little bit much. You got to have rooms and other locations, your cafeterias and like, where you can do registration and take care of parents and not make them use gas and go wait and try to meet somebody at a shopping center and the like. I mean, I'm a business guy. If I had a hot dog stand, I'd be happy because I'd have 1,000 people walking past and my sales would probably go up. But that's just wrong. It's wrong to inconvenience, you know, everybody's still recovering from the typhoon and the like, and don't turn away, you know, parents and children from the schools that are coming that are trying to, you know, register or move their children, for God's sake. You know, if they're coming there to move their children, they're taking ownership, right? Okay, my school's not going to open, I'm going to do something. And to tell them that they have to, you know, be outside the gate and the like, I'm very disappointed with that, and I want to put that on the record and make one suggestion once again. Superintendent said we're all one team. Well, you know, we have a beautiful University of Guam, and they have a wonderful field house, and we hold so many events there. We even hold elections there sometimes for FSM and the like, where thousands of people can come and do that. If we're going to do this to where we're going to make parents and children be inconvenienced trying to register for school or deregister for school so they can do something, let's ask the UOG faculty and staff if they'd be courteous enough to let us use the field house so that all the schools can be represented with their own booths there and the like, and they can put their management teams there, and people can go up there and not be removed to their dignity, you know, to probably take time off of work and lose money or different things just to have to go to a school and to fight to get in to try to take care of their children. I'm sorry, I know I've probably abused my time on this, but that really irritates me. You know, we should be more customer service oriented. We should be more accommodating, you know, to these parents that are suffering too, thinking how their kids are going to go to school. And it's unconscionable that you would say, well, this is good enough for our people to go in and work. It's good enough for our teachers to go in and clean and people that want to help them, but it's not good enough to accommodate our parents and our children. Unacceptable. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Vice. So, Speaker Teresa Lai.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation this morning and for all the work that all of you have been doing. Congratulations to Maritza Martyrs. That's awesome. And of course in Alahan and And I'm sure that was done with the cooperation of a lot of parents and a lot of heart and a lot of hard work, and that all of you are aiming for the same, and we recognize that. So don't think we don't recognize how hard you are working. I'd like to ask, are we still operating under emergency procurement for anything, for everything?
So my understanding is we haven't exercised the option to go under the declaration of an emergency for any of our procurements. A lot of our procurements pre-Typhoon were already in the workflow and requisition flow. So it's a matter of executing those. And then in terms of some of the emergency responses, we've been primarily, as Mr. Anderson said, working under the DLAN and getting a lot of the support services supported by Homeland Security.
All right, so if it goes under DLAN, that's because of Typhoon related?
Correct.
Are you saying you're doing also self-emergency declaration?
We haven't exercised that option currently.
Have not?
Not yet. Not that I'm aware of it in passing in the last superintendent. Joe, are you aware of? No, yeah.
Okay. So about those DLAN requests, you said, I thought I heard you say yesterday, so the money was recalled, the 20 million was recalled, and that you now are required to send your request up there to Civil Defense, trying to use the 20 million, right? But I thought I heard you say that none was approved yet, but today you gave a list of what you've sent requests for?
No, so required not, advice possibly. I mean, advice is probably the more accurate terminology. When we, again, back in June 12, when we did our original submission for access to the $20 million, we got a response, and our superintendent, who's not here to field the question, she got a call and she was notifying us that we're going to have to take a different route for access to the funds. I think it's within the same month we were on the EFSC Council, and you're familiar with the Education Advisory Council, which was also then, again, reiterated that the funds have been pulled for emergency purposes to support the government as a whole. So during that discussion, in my meeting with the superintendent, we were advised to get the same level of support to go through this process with the DLAN. To date, we haven't, from the items that we received, those are still, my understanding is still current in the process. And I believe the closest one to completion, or at least the assessment's been completed, is the mode remediation.
The what?
The mode, yes.
So that's what I'm asking. So what have you received from DLAN in that, I mean, what does it amount to? Mode mitigation?
So far, that's what I know. So far, that's what I know is one of the earlier requests tied to the original funding that we were looking for. I know DLAN has provided other support directly to GDOE. They've provided some.
Right,
Yeah, Chris, go
yeah,
ahead.
I heard that, yeah, like the guard debris removal.
Yes.
All right, but the purposes for the 20 million that you had assigned are not being addressed. They're just not being addressed, or you're addressing them another way?
So for the purposes that we went through the DLAN. For the purposes of the other remaining items, we are still looking for funding solutions.
Can you send us a list?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. I also wanted to ask about the public health meetings. So public health early on, told us they would have an issue completing all the inspections just because of the time, also because of the number of inspectors that they had. It was put on the table on day one, but everybody expected that the government of Guam would be able to assist and meet that need. And I believe that there were promises made that we were going to do an entire GovGuam approach to help DOE. And I want to know, since February, when those meetings took place about the GovGuam, helping DOE, and then since April 1, since the law was passed, implementing the rules immediately, or for the upcoming fiscal school year, the new rules, what has public health's response been? Has it changed? Are you still expecting government of Guam help?
Well, when we met with the Lieutenant Governor and then Acting Superintendent Judith Wanpad, along with the Director of Public Health, and Tom Nadeau, who's the administrative DEH. We had talked about the possibility of utilizing inspectors from EPA and the help of the Guam National Guard. But since then, they have not been able to get any of additional inspectors to assist them in their inspection.
I know Public Health has, even before that law was passed, been trying very hard through DOA to get them to address their hiring and to hire additional inspectors for not just DOE, but for all of the inspections that they have to do around the island. So that's unfortunate to hear that has not progressed. Can I ask who you're working with in the DOE side, just the kind of coordinator? I mean, sorry, on the public health side?
Mainly
Okay.
Tom Nadeau.
All right, so what about their inspection time? Have they given you any new estimates?
Yes, so Antolon should start today.
Antalan?
And so, like I said, in our last meeting, in the event that Antolon hits 41 demerits, they're going to stop inspection of Antolon and go to the next school.
All right, I mean, but as to the schedule to try to get the 14 schools inspected, what is their newest timeline that they give you on that?
Typically, they take about 7 days to complete inspection as well as complete their report. And so when you look at 7 days per school, you're looking at in the next 3 weeks, 3 schools, right?
Right.
And so.
So they haven't changed that estimate
No, it has
at all
not.
in all the meetings that you've had every
Well,
week?
the only change is that once a school hits 41 demerits, they're going to stop inspection.
And move on.
And move on to a different school.
All right, and what about the variances? Have they given you in your weekly meetings, any response as to the variances or a timeline when to expect responses as to the variances?
Well, they're overwhelmed with the variances. We've submitted over 120 variances. 7 were approved, 30 were returned back to the schools for more detail. And so that's where we're at as far as variances are concerned. So we have not been denied any of our variances. They've been returned to request for more information relative to the variance that the school administrators are requesting for.
All right, good. And they said they would work with you with the variances, so you've got about 60 more. Did they give you a timeline when they expect to be able to get through those?
Honestly, no. At 120 is a lot. They have a team of, I think, only 7 people in the DEH department, and so they're inspecting as well as reviewing the variances. So obviously, they're overwhelmed with just school inspections.
All right. I was wondering about my colleague's suggestion about UOG. That's a great suggestion. I was also going to ask about the central facilities of DOE. Why are we not just inviting them down to the central offices to come down and do registrations and all of those types of things that parents need to do for schools?
School administrators are aware and they're familiar that they could utilize our central office. However, parking is terrible in central office, but that is an option for school administrators to use as DOE headquarters.
All right, I wanted to ask, someone had told me, maybe it was a former superintendent, that the student enrollment has decreased over the years.
Correct.
And have you looked at consolidating schools, for example, elementary schools, and then using one of those for one of these other schools that needs double session or won't be able to open?
Not at this time, ma'am. I know within the last 3 years our population has been about 25,000, but prior to that it started off when I was a deputy superintendent at 30,000. That was back in 2012, and has gone down to 25,000 in the last three years. However, we have maximized teacher teachers in the classrooms, school administrators. I've worked with school administrators on maximizing so that they're not hiring more teachers than they need.
You mean the teachers are at their maximum classroom size?
Meaning, yeah, I mean, based on their student enrollment, you know, they hire the proper number of teachers for that student enrollment. So.
Now that I'm talking about it, it was actually also a suggestion made, I think, by the Tamuning mayor to look again at the Chief Brody Elementary and the Tamuning Elementary, or whether elementary schools could be combined to make space for other schools that might need to use one of those campuses.
So just to clarify, the purpose of the discussion was not to consolidate schools for the purpose of closing the school, but we did pair up schools for the possibility of double session and so forth. So again, based on their readiness, if a school were to close down and there's a neighboring school around them, we kind of have a map that shows where it's possible for this school to go there, but not for the purposes of, you know, the population going down and closing schools. It was really just for the purposes of potential double session.
So you're saying today that you don't think the population has decreased enough to consolidate any schools?
No, it's not that. It's just that we haven't had
Okay.
that discussion.
All right, then the other thing I just wanted to, I saw this survey that was going around, and then I'm seeing today there's a handout with the results. Some of the questions to me, you know, I find them troublesome. I don't know what was the purpose of the survey, and I don't want to debate that right now. I just want to ask, I mean, what are you trying to imply the options are besides threatening parents about you're going to have to go to online? Because, I mean, first of all, public health, one of the questions is, do you believe the whole school should be closed down if part of it can still be used? I think public health made that very clear in one of their statements here, that they're going to work with that if you can partition off the unusable areas, that they would be able to pass a school, right? If the rest of those areas. So I don't know what that question was trying to imply. I don't know why we are asking. It's interesting. Are you comfortable? I am comfortable to send my child to school while DOE is in the process of addressing the facilities issues brought out public health inspection. That is so vague. Are you saying parents are going to say, yes, send my kids to school while you're addressing facility issues, but facilities that are not even meeting basic public health requirements? That's really I just want to say, and then there's a lot of talk that I've heard about, let's repeal the law. That will save DOE. That will help the students. Really? Because repealing the law only means you're not going to implement the new sanitary guidelines. That's all it did, was activate new sanitary guidelines that have been waiting for 5 years to be implemented, and that are implemented in other areas. We put that on hold. But I really wonder if, at the results we're seeing, if the schools would have met the old sanitary guidelines at this pace, right? And so I just don't want to mislead the parents. Like, we're going to invite children into schools that, if we repealed that law, that cannot even meet basic sanitary guidelines. I wish you would just wipe that notion off of your press releases, your surveys, or anything, because I just don't think that will ever be acceptable. Even all of us, we do not want double sessions. We want schools to operate. We're trying to do everything we can to get that to happen. So I just don't see why we're going to suggest to parents, administrators, that no, put up with the rat-infested schools, put up with the falling ceilings, put up with the bathrooms that don't work. No. We're trying to move forward, but yet I keep hearing responses that talk about, I don't know, this. I think maybe the data we need is how many students are going to enroll this year, right? And look again at your populations of your schools. how many classrooms do we have overall in the whole entire school network? Can we rearrange things a little bit? Do we have, if not extra wings, do we have extra classrooms? Just other types of changes that actually might work in the long run better. But I don't know. So because I kept trying to think, what options are they suggesting? Are you suggesting that, and I got one from a teacher that I thought was reasonable. It says if they pass the self-inspection and superintendent can ensure that those self-inspections were done, to standard, is it okay to open pending the public health actually getting there and inspecting, right? That would be an option. That doesn't require us to repeal the law and repeal the guidelines or, the standards that we want our kids to be in. There was another option that I think is being implied. Allow the schools to open without the public health inspections for another year. And I guess you can see why we're all concerned about that, because when we did that and we allowed that, we ended up with schools that were not acceptable. That's all. So there's a gap somewhere in between where there's got to be some standard that we all agree on, right? And if you're saying go less than the current sanitary standards that are applied nationwide, you want to go less than that, then you better make it clear exactly which standards you want to waive. I'm all for, public health giving variances, and the things that you said are very reasonable. Ceiling tiles are going to be fixed, air cons are got procurement orders, doors are backwards, but they work. But I'm sure the building code insisted the doors are supposed to be one way for a reason. That's probably for emergency exits, right? Or something like that. Yes. So if you pose your questions to the parents like that, do you want your children to go to the schools without, fire exits? I'm sure they would say no. So I just say, let's just really, anyways, you're doing a great job at the work you're doing, and I am all for looking at I'm hoping at the meeting with the AG, I'm going to put it on that table with him. It's like, you look at every other building available to the government of Guam, and any of those buildings should be available to DOE, and whatever we can do. I don't know. Every resource, honestly, that was what we expected since February, or even forever, right? That every resource is available to DOE. But can I just ask a technical question? Is DOE able to accept donations? For example, as the chairman suggested, we need sewage pipe reinstalled. Can they accept that as a donation? Yes, so legally you've cleared that, we're good. All right.
Yes, I believe the law provides for in-kind donations to GDOE.
Great. All right, I'd like to help you to advertise the help. I know the principals are working so hard, maybe I should just talk directly to the principals and invite you. The help that you need, you think can be done by donations of the community, let us know. Let's advertise it. Let's see what we can get. I think many of you principals are so resourceful already. You've got that. And you just, I don't know, maybe need some admin to shift. For example, I think most of you principals have hooked up with contractors, right, to work in the schools? Or if not, then maybe the government can help you to do that just somehow for donations. Thank you. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and yes, thank you very much for your very eloquent remarks in defense of this public law. I know that we had spoke about kind of some of the messaging that was coming out of the Guam Department of Education, and I'm glad we're able to resolve that conversation and move forward productively, right? Because ain't nobody trying to hop in a time machine here. We're moving forward. The wheels are going. Everything's in motion. We just stay on this course, and then once and for all, we'll have facilities that meet the safety and sanitation guidelines again, so that we could focus on teaching the kids, and the kids can focus on the learning. Thank you. I apologize. I'd like to recognize my colleagues, Senator Sabina Flores-Perez and Senator Joanne Brown. And at this time, I'd like to throw it over to Senator Tello Taitagui. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and for accommodating me. I have another meeting to attend. But again, I greatly appreciate all the hard work that you're doing and you're putting in. In fact, you know, some of the information that has been provided to us in the last 3 months have been more information I've ever received in the last 6 years I've been here as a senator, to tell you the truth. I mean, you're putting these reports together that makes it simple to read and very straightforward. So greatly appreciate all the hard work you're putting. And I know you're getting a lot of input from your support staff, and they hardly ever get recognized. So kudos to your support staff that are out there. So appreciate it. I just have a quick question with regards to an article that was out in I think it was the Post, if I'm not mistaken, July 17th. There is a roundtable that's been put together from the Attorney General's office regarding these permits. What is the status on that?
That roundtable is scheduled for this afternoon,
At what time?
2 o'clock,
At where?
at the Attorney General's conference
Office?
room.
Okay.
That's 1 o'clock, excuse
Oh,
me.
1 o'clock today at the
Yes.
Attorney General's office? Okay,
Yes.
and it's going to be discussing the sanitary permits and what was provided? Okay. And that's going to be interesting. The other one I have with regards to, I asked a question in June 29th, I believe, when we had the last, it was a roundtable, regarding the insurance that these leaseback schools have on the schools. Because I'm looking at your tiers here, which I always thought was, well, it's called Phase 1, Phase 2. It used to be tiers, I think in the June 29th. Now we're changing it to phase. Okay, so I'll call it phase now. So Phase 2, I'm looking at Okadu. That's a leaseback school, isn't that correct? Okay, I'm also looking at Atacao and Estumbo. They're all leaseback schools. You know, I'm just can't grasp why these schools that are leaseback schools that cover their maintenance cannot be in Phase 1. So I asked the question about insurance, and nobody seemed to be able to have that answer. Do they have insurance so they can cover and repair these damages that need to pass the inspections?
So part of the lease agreement, at least as I reviewed the contract, it does require them to have insurance.
It does require them,
Correct.
right? So have they collected and have they used this money to repair these schools, especially those in Phase 2 and 3?
So we have a scheduled meeting with all the lease schools tomorrow to discuss these items. We'll get that confirmation then.
Okay. And you have scheduled a meeting with them?
Correct.
And so when is that meeting scheduled for?
Tomorrow.
Oh, good. That's nice. Okay. Sorry, the echo in here. It's hard. Okay. A lot of the questions I was asked earlier. Last one. Okay. I know it said only 2. Mr. Anderson's there. Yes. How much from the during the I'm going to bring it up, but during the Calvo administration, I remember for 2 weeks, Governor Calvo required that all agencies in the government of Guam assist DOE in getting back on their feet. And it was done quickly. They were priority, major priority, but I don't see this time around in the administration. It's not happening. So how much are they willing to assist DOE to cover these imperfections in our school, to pass inspections?
Senator, thank you for the question. As I mentioned in my brief about the debris task force, that's comprised of several different government agencies. You have Guam EPA on there. You have the Port Authority of Guam with Dominic Munya.
DPW?
DPW is on there as well, yes. And then again, aside from the debris task force, you've got our attempts to try and leverage support with the Homeland Security and the other agencies that sit on the Emergency Operations Center to get them to support our schools as well.
But I'm sure they can do a whole lot more or give you some assistance to meet the, August 9th deadline for school opening. Are you having any issues with them, complying or saying, okay, we're going to do this tomorrow and they don't show up tomorrow, things like that? Are you having problems like that?
No, I think what I'm noticing in terms of the operations tempo, I think for the other agencies is that they're just inundated with the work that they're trying to accomplish for Typhoon Mawar type of activity.
Yeah, well, I
So
think things need
trying
to,
trying to get them to assist us with some of the other things that we're trying to get them to do is just taking a backseat because of their primary missions.
well, Mr. Anderson, if you can, please, you guys are doing really good on reports. Can you tell us what the issues are with regards to getting assistance from the administration to help you get up and running? Like I said, you tell them we need help, we need a backhoe to move something, they don't show up for 2 days, they don't bring their electricians in, we need to fix, because lighting is a really big deal. That kind of report, we need to see that. That needs to be called out.
Sure.
Because if we can take that report and, let the people of Guam really see what the issue is and why we're delayed and who's delaying it, then I think things will move a lot faster. So,
Right.
okay, I greatly appreciate that report too.
Of course.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Tydegui. Senator Lujan?
Thank you much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, panel. Welcome aboard, Dr. Swanson. In your assessment, Dr. Swanson, what state are we on? Are we a state in emergency for the opening of school? We got a few weeks for schools. Are we in a state of emergency at this point? State of urgency? What state are we in at this point? Because we're looking about the different tiers that we're at, and some even tier ones might open on time, but maybe 2 weeks later, and then it goes on to the others where it might open even a little later. So at this point, knowing a few weeks we're going to go back to school, are we in a state of emergency or a state of urgency?
Well, I would certainly say it's a state of extreme urgency. We have a lot of capacity, and one of the suggestions that was made earlier that I really were hoping that we can work our way forward with is all of our facilities that we've been able to rate as in that phase one, that we can go ahead and open pending when they get inspected, and then go from there, because our folks are working from the same standards that the health department is. Sure. And most have been trained in how to apply those.
Sure.
So, and as the urgency is for us to move everybody to phase one.
Sure.
But we know, and we're very much aware, that some of the capital projects that it's going to take with a few of our buildings, it's just because of the complexity, it's going to take a little longer.
Absolutely.
We're tasking every revenue source and labor source that we know of, and to include FEMA, that's even looking for other grant opportunities and other agencies that can help us that are not FEMA, but affiliate with them in conjunction, because we're working with that internally offline. So it's a high priority, and I want schools to open on time. Because instruction takes time, and there's also some other contractual requirements that if we delay, we run into the following school year, which is a collision that we don't want to have either. So.
Sure, I mean, and we've had the lingering problems, I guess, as well as on top of the typhoon. So.
Correct.
Yeah, but let me ask you this as well as, have you had an opportunity to sit down with the administration, with the governor and lieutenant governor, and express this state of extreme urgency at this point?
Yes, I did. I met with the governor last Friday, and she assured us that she was going to intervene in the areas that she can. I don't know what that's going to look like yet, but I have met with her.
Okay. Did she say in her intervention what the areas that she can? What areas can she not intervene in?
I can't draw those parameters.
Well, because I'm
the
the governor of Guam. I'm just wondering what entity she cannot intervene in and help out. Can she help out in public health? I'm sure she can. Can she help out with DPR or Public Works? Absolutely, she can. Can she help out with EPA? Absolutely, she can. Can she help out with GPA and water? Absolutely can at this point. So. I'm, in that statement, not your statement, but the governor's statement, in which she can say, okay, tell me which ones you can't intervene in.
My understanding in that conversation was that she was going to focus on public health. Now, I don't know what that looks like in terms of what her intent is. And
Okay,
then she reminded and reiterated to me that
Sure.
those forces like National
Sure.
Guard and
Okay.
EPA and those other agencies in her government that we are working with.
But you would agree it would be very helpful if a state of extreme urgency was declared and the resources were provided to the Department of Education, right?
I absolutely would agree.
Absolutely.
If that leverages things in the administration that we can
Sure.
access that we
Yeah.
don't currently have.
Sure.
Certainly.
Sure, thank you much for that. Also, when I'm looking at this, I know Senator Duenas brought this to my attention as well. When you look at power, water, telephone, and internet services that are up, and the percentages are up, again, should we, we're hoping we don't have to go to online learning as well, but number of schools, 17 in internet, and only 43%. How, if you go to online learning, how can we possibly expedite online learning with only 43% of the internet service up? And likewise, if public health would not allow you to get into the schools to access the classrooms, where would the onlining occur? Teachers' homes?
Hits our level of frustration. To give you an example, I left my office yesterday because I needed to do internet work and could not
Sure.
do it because we did not have power, and I went home to do it, and as I was into that process, I lost power there.
Sure.
So
No, yeah,
we're all in that boat. We have technology tools that we can provide to students to also give them remote access, but the issue about teachers being able to access their
Sure.
facilities at
Yeah.
school is a real issue on many
sure.
campuses.
No, absolutely. I mean, and even if they have access to the schools, and you have to go on online learning, but then your internet service is not up,
Yeah.
or worse than that, you're not allowed into the schools, but the students are going to be in online learning, okay?
Well, and to make matters worse, my experience in my previous school district and also as reiterated here,
Sure.
those students that are working with paper and pencil packets, it's inconsistent on a good day in terms
Sure.
of the effectiveness of it. So we don't want to do either one of those if we can possibly avoid it.
How many of the schools, maybe whoever may answer this, how many of the schools are in a lease transfer? How many of the schools that are listed are in lease transfer?
It's 6.
About 6 of them? Okay.
And
Yeah. I'm just wondering, within the contracts, there were not only a maintenance contract, but also in the builder's contract, is that, that the loss of service, loss of use, basically. And, Guam is still paying, and so if we can't utilize it because of a structural situation or a maintenance issue, we have a legal issue that, heck, I wouldn't pay you. If I can't use the school, if there's a loss of use of that particular school for a period of time, a prorate should.
that's one of the agenda items for our meeting with the owners.
Okay.
That's tomorrow, is because what am I paying for?
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate all the work you've done that you continue to do. And again, I'm going to say what I said months ago, and this even prior to Typhoon, that Governor, help us out. Claim a state of emergency. This one is extreme urgency, because she has the opportunity to mobilize and get things done at this point. I mean, you have access to the National Guard and some of these things that can be done. And like I said, I don't know what she can't access. I don't know what she cannot do to help the school. That baffles me that she said, I'll help where I can. You're the damn governor. Anyway, thank you very much. Just share.
Thank you, Senator Lujan, and I think I don't want to speak for all my colleagues up here, but I'm disappointed in the lack of assistance. And I just want to say, emergency response, Typhoon related cleanup is separate, to me, separate and apart from a genuine, real effort that we were promised we were going to see back in February. And this is this mythical whole of Gov Guam approach. And yeah, I just have to state for the record that we are disappointed, but I'm also encouraged at how hard we are working towards this goal, even without that promised assistance. And so I just ask that we keep moving forward, and we got this, Guam. Senator Blas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the panel for being here today and taking the time. A couple of questions I have with regard to, first off, you know, times have changed. This conversation prior to Marwar, we were just talking about how to get our schools open to get the mold, and now that we had a typhoon that has hit us, I'm sure it has dramatically changed the work order in many of the schools, okay? And I can see this, but absent Marwar, and recognizing that you were already having challenges with public health conducting the inspections, if there was no Marwar for us to consider today, would there have been enough time, public health, to conduct all the inspections and you to do all the repairs to be able to open the schools in August?
No, they probably would have been ahead by 3 more schools or 4 more schools because of that time frame during the typhoon, but there still wouldn't have been enough time for them to do all schools.
And so now with, we're having to deal with another disaster. This has obviously then prolonged the inspection process, if you will. Forget the assessment that it's necessary, but just the inspection process. So a lot of this stuff, quite honestly, is external, is beyond your control in being able to do this. Okay, so let's talk about some of the external challenges that you have here. You know, Mr. Anderson, I appreciate, and I'll direct this to you with regards to your I guess, being the point person, you know, with Homeland Security, and you got DLAN. I also know, though, that in public assistance, when you're dealing with the recovery or response, that there's a timeline before this response and recovery, you know, this mitigate or this cleanup effort expires. Is there enough time? I think that it's if I'm not mistaken, it's the 27th of July that the expiration for cleanup.
Well, just to clarify, Senator, thank you for the comment, but there's a different person who's handling the FEMA recovery for the department. My specific task on the School Readiness Task Force is strictly just the debris removal and then working with Homeland Security to try and make sure that we get the support that we need, specifically working with government agencies to support some of our requests, like the mold mitigation is one of them.
Okay.
But I'm not really handling the FEMA recovery piece.
Okay, so that I want to bring this to you is be very careful, because I know that there's an expiration timeline, or there's a timeline as to when things have to transition from the response to the recovery to the mitigation, and I think that timeline is coming up within the next couple of weeks, or within the next week, and making sure that you're not caught in that position where you still have to do some of this work, but now time has expired and they have to move forward and they can no longer. So be very careful with that. That's, obviously one of your external challenges beyond your control. Do you have a listing of basically other external challenges that you may have outside of your control that you're going to have to rely on? I think some of the obvious things are, again, in working with you all prior to the disaster, prior to Marwar, I know that one of your challenges was working with getting structural engineers and the likes to be able to assist you in being able to do the assessment Now they got to do assessments in their own agencies, and you become secondary, in as far as priority. But I'd like to hear from you, in as far as what some of those external challenges may be.
Yeah, we actually had a list that we brainstormed before. Some of it is somewhat internal also, but it's, some of these things are just out of our hands. For example, the volume of work, it's just, right now it's really beyond the capacity of our facilities and maintenance, so that's a big challenge. We did have 2 job fairs, and even though they were meant for different things, we still accept the applications, and the applications are still being accepted, and we are all actively recruiting, folks that we want to work with our facilities and maintenance. But, again, a big challenge is if they're a skilled worker, they tend to just work in the private sector, because when they come to the Guam payroll, they start off at the bottom, right? So it's not very enticing for them to come to us. Procurement timelines is a challenge, definitely. But again, as they noted, we're working through those. So a lot of these procurement items started even before the typhoon. And since they already encompass a lot of the work that needs to be done, we're just trying to push those forward. I know Dr. Zenny just leaned over and talked to me about some of the different steps that they have to take. About now, everything that we do has to go to the Attorney General's office versus our attorneys used to be able to handle certain things in-house. Right, so that does cause some kind of a hiccup, where now pretty much all the legal work has to go externally. Availability of contractors is already starting to show. Like, for example, I'm not allowed to say certain things about procurement, but in certain procurement bids, we're only getting like 1 or 2 bidders, and sometimes it's just the same people, right? Even though we kind of announced it large scale. So there's some things that people are interested in, some things that they're not. So we kind of do have a limited pool. Supplies and materials is another challenge. For example, we mentioned that we were happy last week to find a vendor that had ceiling tiles, because all the other vendors ran out, right? And some of the vendors that we did know don't take GovGuam purchase orders. So when we found that one vendor, our attempt was, can we buy everything, right? So that's one of the reasons why we're asking for the emergency procurement, but to increase the cap of emergency procurement, because some of the things that we need to purchase are not expensive in terms of the pieces. Like if you compare them to other companies, the costs are reasonable, but it's just the volume. We just need so many ceiling tiles that there are cases and cases that we just want to buy everything. There's also, of course, you mentioned the inspection schedule with public health. That's something that we're going to have to work with them to get around. And we do know that some of the challenges related to double sessions and multiple school closures might be logistical. So Deputy Cruz does meet with Department of Public Works about busing and how transportation would have to be addressed. And even now, with 2 schools going on double session, they're able to handle it, and we're very grateful for their accommodation with Public Works. But we fear that if there's 5, 6 schools that are all going double session, there might be some challenges with scheduling and locations. And then lastly, challenges with online instruction. We're aware of that, and hence we put together the same support teams that we did during COVID, supports for administrators and staff, supports for teachers, support for students, and supports for their families. But we know that that still was a very tough time, because getting the message out, getting these families ready to go online, getting these families to a point where they're able to support their kids is definitely going to be a challenge. But I do want to point out, as what Senator Barnett said, is we only anticipate this to be temporary. We're going to push really hard. We're going to continue to push really hard to pass those inspections. If they can do more than one inspection at a time, it does speed it up. But right now, that's our main strategy, is pass those inspections. Hopefully the variances, can be passed, because those 6 big ticket items, almost every school will have a challenge with those. inclusive of air conditioning, inclusive of tiles and restrooms and whatnot. So if those variances can be passed, that would definitely help.
Again, like I said, this would have been a totally different conversation had we not had Typhoon Mawar to deal with.
Yeah.
Okay, and you had the challenges in itself already in just trying to get past the inspection. Now it's getting past the inspection and trying to deal with the damages.
Right.
Okay, and I see this. So I think that we would appreciate that in one of the discussions, and maybe something that you can provide. I would appreciate is you provide a listing of basically what are some of those external challenges and what are those alternatives that you have to being able to deal with some of those, with those external challenges. Guys, I mean, unfortunately, there's some of us that tend to forget that we had just about 45 days ago, we had a Category 4 storm that came through here, okay? And, not discussed in this forum, but I'm sure it's going to be discussed later on down the road, is the fiscal and the financial challenges that we're going to have as a government to be able to deal with these, to deal with this disaster, much less your inspections. Okay? So this is going to be a bigger problem outside of GDOE, because the next question I have is, how are you paying for all of this? Okay? Right now I'm kind of confused with this governor. I don't know why she hasn't even asked for 100% in a Category 4 disaster, being that we're at right now. I think we're still at 75-25. But what that comes down to, first off, is that you're going to have to come up with a full amount and then expect a 75% return on what you just paid. But the problem is, how are you going to come up with the money? Okay? That's another question and a discussion that we need to have. Outside of the inspections the public health inspections that you need, because the damages that you have to your schools, much less a conversation you're going to have with the individuals or the companies that own those schools that were on lease back. That's only 6. You have 41 campuses. Okay? I'm going to remind you, I think that of the 41 campuses that you have, there were 36 campuses back at the time when I was the Homeland Security Advisor. Unfortunately, we declared self-insurance. So you know what you're going to have a problem with? You're going to have a problem with disasters or damages that are going to be in your schools that you supposedly had insurance for, that we told FEMA that we're going to get insurance for, that we don't have insurance, and guess what? It's not going to be qualified. It's not going to be eligible for reimbursement, but you're still going to have to repair it. And so I bring this up because as we're sitting here and we're talking about, okay, how we're going to get the schools open, and yes, please, okay, I got to answer to somebody who sleeps right next to me in bed who happens to teach in one of your schools. Okay? Okay? And yeah, she doesn't like the idea of online instruction. Oh, that's another whole discussion. Okay, with regards to online discussion, because the last time we did this exercise, okay, we still had although we had restricted ability, we still had the ability to go into campuses. Okay? We had the ability to be able, and right now, as my colleague to the left of me, Senator Lohan, stated, I don't know about you, but Docomo's still out in my home. Okay? And then how are we going to require our kids, or much less our teachers, to be able to have access online when they can't even access it at home? Because you've restricted it from the schools because of the public health inspection. Much less the damage. So I'm sitting here and I'm listening to this whole discussion, and I says, guys, I appreciate everything and the concern that you all have, and the efforts that you have, but there are external things that are occurring, okay, that really you really shouldn't be blamed for. Okay? But we need to identify those so that we can help you in being able to try to deal with this. One of them, I have to agree with all of my colleagues who have talked about it, you got $50 million that you were supposed to be able to use. Okay? And this was back at a time, and I'm just going to remind the administration, oh, don't worry, we have enough money that we got to, the economy is going to be good. Okay? We're doing such a great job with our economy, with our finances. Don't worry, they're going to get it. And now look. And you're going to be blamed for it. Okay? So, yeah, you know, Mr. Cooper, how are you paying for all of this?
So that's a tough question because, again, and you have to separate the issues and understand the environment, right? And I'm sure, Senator, you're aware, as you said, you should have had insurance. When you're trying to leverage federal grants, there's the duplication of benefits that you're going to be in violation of. So currently, right now, in our attempt, it was exactly that, going through having the local appropriations to establish the fronting of the money to get FEMA reimbursements. So we've gone through that process. Unfortunately, we haven't been successful. We've gone through now leveraging what we can in the support of the DLAN. So currently, I don't have legislative appropriation or additional funds to front these expenses relative to typhoon damage. The CIP funding of $20 million was the seed money that we were planning to use to get the reimbursement accounts established.
Okay. Do you have a running tally as to how much you've already spent on what you anticipate to be able, you're going to need to spend?
So that's a hard figure to target. I know a few weeks ago in Judy, in her last day, she estimated at a little bit over $14 million. That was $14 million and an early assessment. We'll have to kind of scrub those numbers and get a better updated figure. I know initially when we went straight to DOA to get some of the immediate damage, which was the mold, the fencing, the broken doors, the water damage, we already were upwards of close to 10 million.
Okay. Okay. That truly appreciate if you be able to get that. So I'm basically two different things. Is one is basically your external challenges, okay, and then secondly is you know how much this is going to cost you, how much you anticipate that it's going to cost us, and where you're trying to get this money from, okay. So with that, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Senator Blas. Just ask my colleagues to be mindful of the one, is it 1 or 1:30? We have a roundtable at the Attorney General's office, and I did have a few people signed up for public comment, but Senator Brown?
Are you telling me to keep my comments short, Mr. Chairman? Is that the infliction that I end up at the short end of the stick after everyone has had their opportunity to ask 10 million questions and make comments? Because I'm almost always here, so. I did want to ask, and granted, you know, your challenges have been multiplied as a result of the typhoon. But the issues that came up before then that we discussed concerning these lease schools, and I'm sure hopefully after your meeting you'll have more information, but I'm a little concerned, and I had inquired the last time we had spoken as to whether or not there was an annual checklist that DOE had to verify that the contractors were performing. And I didn't quite get a clear answer. Where are we with regards to that? Because one situation was mentioned that, you know, JFK, the doors didn't open in the proper direction. And, you know, I would argue if I was in your situation, if public health is making that an issue, public health would have signed off on the building permit. I was at DPW at the time JFK was reconstructed. So, you know, I'd kind of wonder how they could hold that against me if I was DOE, if they signed off and authorized the occupancy of that school, if that was an issue. But does DOE have that list, and how are you verifying it? I was told that supposedly the principals of those leased schools were going to be the ones to verify. I didn't get a sense that there was any organized process at the administrative level to verify that, because certainly if we're paying for the service, we would want to get the service.
So we just assigned somebody on there with CIP. This is Brian Nicholas, the new CIP administrator. So I'm assisting Carl right now on putting together the grants management part. I mean, not the contract management part.
But have we not had one? I mean, we've had these 6 leased schools for quite some time, yes?
There has been one in the past, but I did not have access to it then.
I think it just points out, and again, as my colleagues have mentioned, I think we all appreciate, I think the public appreciates this centralized presentation on where all the schools are. We probably, since we're at this level now, should continue it so that annually everyone knows where we are with regards to schools. We're hoping that if they're brought up to the standard they need to be, it should be easier to maintain moving forward. We understand the challenges with the history, but I think you're also seeing the expectations the public have, that we have, being elected by them to be here to represent their interests of wanting to see these issues addressed. And for DOE itself, and I'm a little jaded. I've been watching, and I've said this at many meetings. I've heard this story time and time again. My eyes glaze over because, I hear the same old, and some cases the problems have gotten worse. And this is, I was here years ago when, you do now have 3 times the budget we used to appropriate. So, there's a certain degree of that in place. Maybe you can take it to the next level and that we see. I'm very happy to see your collective presentation. And I know a lot of efforts are focused on trying to get these schools open in the next few weeks as much as possible, and I think we appreciate that. But these type of things are standard administrative practices. They should have been in place. We want to see them in place. We want to make sure, because we are paying the money for it, that these contractors perform. So I hope you standardize that among all the 6, whatever is in your contract that they're supposed to deliver, to verify that the delivery is being made. I don't know all the reasons as to why the schools that were leased. I mean, your acting superintendent had previously mentioned that we put the leased schools up because we assumed that they would pass inspection, that they would meet those requirements, and much to our surprise, collectively, we find out that they didn't for whatever reason. So I hope that definitely can be looked at. One of the other things that was brought up at that previous meeting we had concerned Teadsden High School, and the feedback we'd gotten from DOE was that while the rain from the typhoon got into the classrooms and caused mold, the feedback was that the contractor was not going to address the repairs unless DOE provided a purchase order to address the repairs, which kind of raised our eyebrow, because I'm thinking, if I'm leasing a building from you, I'm not responsible. I don't think I should be responsible for the inability of the building to stay dry, typhoon or no typhoon. I mean, I lease, I rent a building for my office, my office space. I don't think I should be liable for addressing mold if water came in through the walls. I would think that the landlord should do that. And is that still the case, and why is that? I mean, I'm kind of surprised by that feedback. Where are we with regards to Teadsden?
So I know that we did meet with the representative of our landlord for Teadsden High. The then acting superintendent did go through a review of the contract. One of the way the contract was drafted and written was that it stipulated that I guess it's the manager of the property, the landlord, so to speak, is responsible for the structural integrity of the building and also the air conditioning. So we looked at that language closer, had our legal counsel give us some advice. We are setting up that meeting tomorrow because we are very concerned about the level of support and exercising to make sure that some of these issues are addressed.
Well, and I would hope so, because I think, everyone's looking at this as a model. They're looking at Simon Sanchez. We're going to do Simon, we want this agreement. We want to be able to have maintenance included, and that's going to resolve all our problems. And if we're having issues with the existing contracts, then, the fact that your regular schools that don't have these contracts, at least 2 of them, and they're both down south, yay for the southern schools, that at least they got a passing grade, and they have the highest grade so far. But if our contracted schools that we're paying for every day are not meeting that standard for whatever reason, or you have a landlord that's saying, oh, because of this, we're not responsible. Well, if it's a structural issue that's causing water to come into my building that I'm renting from you, then by all means, I think that's your problem. And it's unfortunate because, this particular company has a lot of contracts on the island, and they're a pretty big operation, and for them to kind of muscle DOE kind of bothers me. I think it bothers all of us to hear that. I won't mention their name. I think we know who they all are. But I hope you go into that being well prepared to argue, because this is the time when we need their help and their support, particularly if we need to facilitate, getting our children back in the classroom. So I hope DOE asserts your position. I'm always one of wanting to walk into negotiation to make sure it's to my advantage and to the advantage of the interests that I represent. We're paying good money for their service. I think we have an expectation that that be delivered and not have them push us around, so to speak. So I hope you walk in well prepared to ensure that our interest is protected, especially when we're paying on top of that. Because if this is not the model, and we need to go back to the old days and hire a custodial, which we knew who they were. We knew who our cafeteria service people were. We knew who our parapros were. We knew who our principal and our vice principal was, and it worked. The basic old educational system that I and many benefited from worked. And now we've got all these levels and different styles of education and different titles for everybody under the sun. And like I said the other day, we're graduating children that don't have basic ability to read and write and pass basic tests as they try to enter into higher education or try to apply for, as we mentioned on Guam, law enforcement positions, that they just can't make basic requirements. That bothers me because I don't know at the end of the day what all this is for if we're not accomplishing that. That should be the ultimately most important delivery of the school system. So with that, Mr. Chair, I have no further comments. Thank you for everyone. I know it's a busy time for all of you to come down here, and I know it's probably a pain. I hated coming to the legislature when I was no longer a member, but it's a necessary evil, so to speak, but I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Perez?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you everyone for all your hard work. And I'm also looking forward to assisting in facilitating this. So I guess a lot of the good questions were asked, but I just want to follow up on the status of the procurement. So before Mara hit, I know there was a lot of work as far as scopes were done, perhaps solicitation packages were put together for the different districts. I understand I believe it's the Hadza district was already released, is that correct? Or what is the status of procurement for the scopes of work?
I believe the Haza district was out for bid last Friday.
Sorry, can you speak closer to the mic? I didn't quite understand what you said.
Sorry, the Haza district is out for bid as of last Friday. And the other districts are still pending.
Okay, so how many more packages are supposed to be released as far as the solicitation?
I believe 3 more packages were supposed to be released.
So for the central and the northern?
I believe, what was it?
Or how were you dividing up the procurement? So I guess the question was, it's my understanding that there was packages that were going to be released based on the scope of work in which you were collaborating with Guam Power Authority. And then Mauer hit, right? And so I'm going to follow up on that question alone too. So what is the status of procurement?
Okay, so if I can, on the requisition process and where we're at with the kind of what we're calling it the refurbishment of our campuses, which is the large-scale CIP projects, that totals about 80 million and it's split through the 4 districts. We were pre-publication, that was sitting with the AG's review. The Typhoon obviously hit, devastated our campuses. In their review, they made some comments for us to go through the record to see if there's any additional scope of works that had to be changed so that we can accomplish the procurement and the refurbishment of the schools with the understanding that further damage has been done because of the devastation of the typhoon. Upon looking at the wording and the language and the original scopes of services, our team had to certify the record that the original scope of services that we designed the project to go out and replenish the schools were still intact and were still going to be accomplished without additional services needed for the typhoon, and have a way of delineation between what was directly supported under large-scale CIP funded under ARP and anything additional that will be funded for FEMA reimbursements. So that, my understanding is with procurement, it was certified, it's going to go back through the process for review.
Okay, so there weren't any changes. Is that what you're saying?
I believe when it came in, we take a look at the record, our team said that the scope of services weren't substantial to change the bid packaging, so we'll go back out to and continue the work with the 80 million.
And so right now it's in the AG's office, is that correct?
It's believe it was certified and it's being under, it might be with our in-house attorney before it gets to the AG's, but I know it's under legal review.
Okay.
So it goes through us and then it goes through our attorney. So let me find out if it's hit the AG's office yet.
So how soon is that going to get to the AG's office?
As long as it passes all the required documentations and certifications so that it can be efficient review of AG. So I can't give you an estimated timeline, but we're hopeful that it's done by, if it's not done already, we're hopeful that it's done in the next day or so.
Okay.
I can work with legal to get it out.
And is it my understanding that you have I believe it's Deputy or Assistant Attorney General Nishihara, is he still your go-to person in the AG's office?
Yes, absolutely. He's been very critical in assisting our in-house attorneys.
Okay. And then I guess at that point, we definitely need to keep abreast. Obviously, we're here to trying to get things through, faster. I think, so that the quicker that can get done, cleanly, yeah, the quicker we can solve many of these issues. The other thing is the mower, effective mower. And have you estimated, I didn't hear any estimate of the damage. Has there been a full assessment and an estimate of the damage to the schools?
Yeah. Again, I think I want to go ahead and repeat on the record what our previous acting superintendent gave to this body, and that number was about $14 million. But I do want to caution that was a preliminary and early estimation. So again, the precision to that figure it's our best guess estimate at this point in given time, and we'll do further assessments, and as we go, obviously that number will be subject to change.
And is that on top of the solicitation packages that you are preparing?
It looks like it's clear and separate, yeah, so it's going to be on
It's
top
separate.
of the, yeah.
And is that going to go through emergency procurement, or is that going to go through traditional procurement?
I know our early estimates of the $10 million was directly associated with the mode and the down fencing and the water, and that's actually going through the process in the DLAN system now. So I don't handle the procurement outside of GDOE, and even within GDOE, we have our assigned procurement office, but we can follow up and see if they're going to exercise the emergency procurement for anything entered in the DLAN. I believe that's the idea and the premise of us putting it into the system.
Okay, so in the change of law in the emergency procurement, it allows for demolition, allows for temporary construction of temporary structures. Have you evaluated that as an option?
I think there's been some early discussions about possible solutions, and we're trying to be our best to be creative as how we can best address our situation. But again, in terms of construction on all of these, it's the first item before us is getting the necessary funding, as you can imagine, to cross which bridge and to make a kind of a decision tree which route we can take. So before we can really consider some of these larger scale items, we're going to need to know what funding is going to be utilized and what funding is available so we can start scaling and creating what are critical.
Okay, so
And
basically you haven't, oh, yes.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, just to clarify a few points. So the 14 million is actually our best estimate of items that are not covered under our current capital improvement project. So what we did is we kind of cross-checked. It was just a real simple review of all the things that are currently under capital improvement work, like for example, the refurbishment, and everything else that was part of Typhoon was used to add up to that 14 million. Now, in terms of temporary facilities, it's just what we mentioned so far that we've discussed is the temporary restrooms. Because some of the schools that are actually in phase 3, 6 of them have been identified because of their restrooms. Like I think one has only one restroom that's functional. So the idea is if they were able to get those restrooms up and running, they would meet the actual ratio. So that's as far as we got with regards to temporary facilities is temporary restrooms. And other items that are included in that, but we believe we have federal funding for because we're using, like we mentioned earlier, trying to buy as many ceiling tiles as we can and as many diffusers that covering, I'm learning all this stuff.
Yeah,
like diffusers
I heard earlier
that cover
you can
the
increase
lights.
the threshold. That's what you're leading to?
Yeah, exactly. And we
sure.
have, those are allowable under federal funds because those are part of electrical anyway. They were also part of ceiling, and I think, I forgot where ceiling falls under, but those categories were already approved under the ARP funds, so we're using those ARP funds for that. The 14 million is everything else that we don't think is part, or we have funding for under those funding.
Okay. The other thing is, have you really thought about delaying school so that there could be an all-hands-on deck to prepare these schools and get it ready? Especially the phase 1, you know, I mean, it looks like there's a couple weeks, right? It estimates more than 2 weeks later. And then phase 2, so this is interesting because I think if there's a way to desegregate the phase 2 schools that are closer to the phase 1, you know, maybe delaying school so that the phase 1 and the really phase 2/phase 1 schools are up and running. Has there been any serious discussion about that? And what is your take on that?
Well, we're hoping that the all hands on deck is happening now. Like that's kind of our intent. You know, we don't want to kind of wait. So we've been asking schools to please, whatever you can, use all your resources now as much as possible to get those schools ready. The next step, we're having our principals meeting tomorrow, coincidentally, and our next step request for them is to give us a specific date. So we only were able to push the phase and what phase do you think you would be. But as you read, those phases are still kind of wide ranged. So we're asking them kind of to come up with a particular date. So those that are closer, you're right, we can actually try to make sure that they're ready to open. And if they are physically able to open, get them inspected. And if possible, try to get them with double sessions so that maybe they can support another school. And we've told them from the beginning that we have to approach this as a district-wide effort, right? So like if you have one school that's, hey, I'm good, I passed inspection, we're good to go. Well, sorry, you might need to help us with accommodating another school like JFK did and like Ukudu is doing. So pushing back school is not off the table. We're still kind of thinking about that, but our intent is all hands on deck is happening right now. So
Right.
if we were to have to push back, those would be things that for whatever reason we just couldn't accomplish.
Yeah, what I meant was that, I know teachers they're worried about getting their classrooms ready,
Yeah.
but perhaps maybe we need to do a pause and make sure the school's ready
Right.
and maybe delay that opening date.
Yeah,
to
it's still on the
ensure-
table.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
okay. Do you have your interagency partners already lined up for the phase 2?
We did provide a listing to the school administrators and their interagency partners, and so school administrators will work directly with the director or the agency to help with whether it be Tier 2 or Tier 1 fixes.
But is it like a global plan? So let's say like the National Guard, GCC students, or the students that are going through construction trades. Is there a way to kind of really like develop that plan, solidify that plan, so they kind of know where to go to and which schools needs really is in need? Is that, or is it more left up to the schools?
So so we provided a listing of schools with their sister agencies, our government agencies, and they can either reach out to the agencies for assistance, or the agencies in turn may have reached out to them to assist them.
Okay, but there's no memorandum of agreements in place currently. It's just basically it's all organic, taking
That's
the initiative. Do you think that would be an important process for the central office to assist with, to make sure that, okay, we got a plan, definite plan in place, people lined up, ready to go, so that would kind of expedite the school preparations?
Yeah, I concur with you, absolutely.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I think a lot of the questions were asked. I know consolidation, I think definitely we need to look at, maximizing the resources that we currently have. And as far as procurement, of course, definitely something I can work with you on that. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you,
this whole
Senator
morning.
Barris.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a couple questions. I know we're all heading to the Attorney General's roundtable, but students with special needs, I'm getting overwhelmed, inundated with just communications from parents about the fate of students with special needs. Can you give me an update on that, or are we moving any plans separate and apart from everything else to accommodate these students?
Yeah, Mr. Babalta is not here, but I will be able to get you that information through Mr. Babalta.
Thank you, ma'am. And then George Washington High School. What are the issues at George Washington High School that are making it? It's a Phase 3 school, right?
It's major leagues. Is it major leagues?
So I don't have the separate listing. Sean, do you have an eye on that?
Just offhand, if anybody knows. And Mrs. Cruz, if you could, please follow up with that information, because I've just heard different ideas that were being discussed, and so we definitely want to be able to communicate that. Thank you.
I think I checked it off on the, oh, here it is. Yes, okay, so right now at GW, it's the mold, the fence lines, the exterior fencing, roof leaking, floor tiles popping up, ceiling tiles, most of the windows, interior doors, and we still have a debris issue there.
And so the floor tiles popping up, that's relative to the rooms that with the asbestos?
No.
Okay.
Not this time.
That's separate other
This
classrooms.
is the other,
All right.
this is the other ones. The ones that have the asbestos are still locked up and they've been sealed. So those are not popping up, luckily.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else before we let you guys go? I'm going to open it up for public comment. We did have some people signed up to provide testimony. Mr. Superintendent, Mr. Sanchez, anything in closing? I know we might as well follow each other over to the ITC building, but carpool.
I don't think it'd be appropriate to add anything at this point. We've given you quite a bit of information, and we know that this is a fluid situation and it's going to be updated pretty regularly. I'm looking forward to a meeting with our contractors. I will say contract administration is something that we don't have a specialty in, but we're going to get one because we have more and more of those kinds of situations, and we need to make sure they service the way they are intended to. But that'd be all from me and my team right now, and I thank them all for their detailed work that they've been doing for weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson, and again, thank you to the team for being here, and I'll see you in a few. Thank you. We did have public comment. We had Mrs. Colette Beausoleil, David Pexa, Paula Agostini, Derek Santos, Vicky Ariola, and I think that's about it. But if anyone else wanted to come up and provide a comment, you're more than welcome to. Thank you. Thank you. Let me find the sign-in sheet. We can go in order of sign-in. Laurel, David, one, Joe Sanchez, Paula Agostini? Yeah. Just state your name for the record and then proceed with your testimony, ma'am. There you go. And go ahead and pull the microphone.
There you go, again.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Paula Agostini. Thank you very much for the chance. I am the parent of a special needs child that is unfortunately scheduled to attend a school that is currently in phase 3. So let's start from there. I have to say that when I first heard about Law 37-4, I really thought, way to go. I was really happy to see it, and that's why I'm here today, because honestly, I've been reading some comments online, and the general mood, I don't want to see it scrapped. I don't want to see it scrapped, delayed, or God knows what. I think it's a step forward to fix some issues that honestly we had way before the typhoon, and that's the way we should go. So I really hope that there aren't any changes made to it. At the same time, I was really, really surprised by, again, some of the comments and the general mood. I don't think that I should have to compromise, education and health. I should be able to get both for my child at the end of the day. So I was really surprised when I received this GDOE survey, by one of the questions. He said, Madam Speaker, actually it has read my mind because I had the same issue, when they asked, would you be comfortable to have your child, at school while we're fixing some issues? And I thought, hang on, first of all, I don't know what these issues are. I know that my school is in phase 3, but I have no idea what's going on. I do believe it can be good if that school is there, clearly. So I would like to see some transparency as well, meaning you're telling me right now that it's in phase 3, well, thank you. What exactly am I dealing with here to begin with? I don't think I should be asked a question. My answer was no. Am I comfortable with it? No. Would you be comfortable to send your child when you don't know exactly what the problems are? What about if I'm mold? I'm allergic to mold. I had it later for years, meaning seriously, I don't want to be there. I think that parenting a child with special needs has very specific challenges. Administering medications is one of those. She has no sense of danger, frankly. She doesn't understand what is appropriate to touch certain things. She needs constant supervision. Again, mold. I had to fight probably for a year of ABA, and I was so lucky to get it, to teach her just to swallow pills. So one of my fears during the pandemic was, if she gets sick, how am I going to give her treatment? So to me, really, health-related issues are particularly scary, and safety, unsafe situations are terrifying, I have to admit. So I really would like them to see them fixed. So I would like to know, as a stakeholder, exactly what's going on, frankly, just not more than phase 3. And what are the plans for these kids? After the typhoon, ESY was suspended. There's no ESY. So I really would like to draw the attention to that situation as well. These kids have been out of school now for a little bit, quite some time, without any services, meaning the only kind of therapy that they normally receive, like speech therapy, nothing is happening. Now you're telling me, there's a plan somehow, supposedly, but I don't see anything clear. So again, transparency would be number 1 on my list. Again, I don't think this law should be scrapped at all, absolutely not, because we need to fix these issues that we had for really a long time, and I appreciate you so much doing this. So thank you for your efforts, really. Again, I appreciate GDOE's effort. I know it's not easy, nobody has a magic wand, everybody gets it. But at the same time, I really want to make sure that you realize that the longer these kids are away from school, the longer they lack services, how hard it is for these kids to transition from one situation to another. I don't think that people sometimes realize this. Changing campus is not that easy for them. Will it be, if they have, for example, to share session, with another school, would they have the chance to visit the school beforehand? That's what we did before ESY sometimes, not to get them totally out of their games. So plans need to be made, and they need to be made with a certain timeline, no matter when the schools are going to open. Parents, I'm pretty sure they will have to take time off of work if it's online mode at the end of the day to assist these kids sitting there, the ones who can sit, clearly. Again, I am lucky in this regard, but I know not everybody is. Material will need to be prepared. There's a lot of challenges that sometimes people, who as regular kids doesn't quite realize how daunting they can be. So I really would like to see something more. Again, more transparency. I really don't like vague promises. I am so sorry. I think that there's a lot of fear from parents out there. There's a lot of unease, not knowing what's going on. Normally people tend to be scared of the things they don't know about, aren't they? So I think that it will go really some clear guidelines and some really transparency from everybody would go a long way to ease also people and to make sure that these kids are not forgotten. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Paula.
Thank you.
David Pexa?
Half a day, I'm David Pexa. I'm an employee with the department. And so the Department of Education is the single most influential agency on island for shaping our culture and community values. The vast majority of employees who work for the government of Guam and local businesses, including myself, are graduates of the public school system. Many of our students are with us from kindergarten through high school. When the department and our government are so dysfunctional that we are failing to provide basic fundamental necessities such as clean and safe schools, textbooks, supplies, qualified teachers, staff, and qualified counselors, we then provide woefully unprepared and dysfunctional employees into businesses and government agencies that are already struggling to meet standards. When you ask the average person of their top 3 words to describe Guam culture, you'll likely get a response such as family, respect, which largely means obedience, and resilience. And while these are all great answers and valid, what you will never hear at the top of this list are the words integrity, accountability, excellence, or wellness. And this is the crux of our current crisis, in the pipeline of self-inflicted crises that plague our government agencies. Because as a government and as a department, we don't demonstrate these values. We let our friends off the hook rather than demand excellence and integrity out of them. Today, we are specifically addressing the crisis of opening schools in the face of building safety and sanitation issues, which I might remind you is another self-inflicted crisis. For decades, people within the department and others outside it have continued to take a passive approach to the problem of our crumbling schools, accepting that this is just the way it is. This is not a problem because Senator Barnett passed a law requiring basic fundamental standards of sanitation and safety to be upheld. This is a landslide that has been developing pebble by pebble over the course of years that has been dismissed, ignored, and prayed about. Waiving the requirement will not cure what ails us. It would only kick the can down the road and vindicate those that continue to believe it doesn't matter if they do the right thing the right way or not, and continue to operate with impunity. While the current self-inflicted crisis needs to be remedied as quickly as possible, the true solution is a paradigm shift and a reckoning with ourselves about what our community truly values. We can't actually tell our children that this community values education because the results that we produce prove otherwise. The fact that we can't open our schools this year is another prime example of the lie that we tell ourselves and our children. If we want our kids to thrive, we must live our values because children will do as we do, not as we say. This isn't a problem that's reserved for DOE. GWA demonstrated that after the storm that they have similar problems and can't keep their water well generators in good repair. Basic fundamentals. There are problems at DOC, GPA, GMH, and Public Health, which have been exposed for not having enough sanitation inspectors to keep our restaurants and schools safe. If the Department of Mental Health and Social Services found children living in a crumbling building that had trash piled in the living spaces and rodent and insect infestation, the children will be removed from the home and the adults will be assessed for mental and emotional health disorders. And herein lies the common root of our community problems with drugs, alcohol, violence, obesity, suicide, and government dysfunction. Our island's soul is sick and has been sick for a long time, probably at least far back as World War II. Just fixing the schools and hiring enough health inspectors will be a Band-Aid if we don't shift our paradigm and change our behaviors. When the Department of Education fails, it makes life harder for every government agency and business who have little choice but to hire and attempt to train our woefully unprepared students who can't perform to standard. It is a really easy equation. If you want to understand what a person, department, government, or community is about, all you have to do is look at where they spend their time and where they spend their money. Nothing else they say really matters because the results will always speak for themselves. A-team players can only put up with so much dysfunction. I have been with the department for 5 years. In my first year, I was elected to be a district-level leader for the school counselors. I was appointed and served as a committee member to develop a social and emotional wellness plan for the department. I've developed a short series available on YouTube that explains what healthy psychology is in everyday language. I personally spent $4,000 to outfit my classroom to be a sanctuary for our students so that we can have an innovative environment that supports social and emotional wellness. I sat at the negotiation table and negotiated a collective bargaining agreement this year. As a petty officer in the Navy, I received 2 Naval Achievement Medals for my work ethic and leadership in a 3-year span. I'm not saying this to impress anyone, but to impress upon you that I am an A-team player and that I bring value to every organization that brings me on board. If I get offered the job that I have already applied for, I want you to understand firsthand why top talent continues to abandon the department. We know better than to stay in toxic relationships with people and organizations who cannot create conditions for us to self-actualize and thrive. I can tolerate the low pay and the lousy retirement, but what I can't tolerate is the disrespect that is okay to have no integrity and to fail to fulfill on our agreements, to allow schools to crumble while employees are illegally signing off on $140,000 overtime compensations. The conditions that GDOE creates for teachers is not much different than asking soldiers to manufacture their own weapons, grow their own food, make their own uniforms, and build their own tanks while fighting in the field. I want to be clear. This is not an indictment of the many great employees that we have in government and GDOE. But until we have a paradigm shift and put values such as integrity, accountability, wellness, and excellence at the top of our list of government and cultural values, and then continue to back it up with actions, then the next self-inflicted crisis will be here before the end of the school year, and the loss of talent will continue. Having to scramble and develop an online teaching plan to accommodate the school closure is a hassle and is not what we signed up for. Everyone sucked it up for COVID because it was an unpreventable act of nature. This current problem is self-inflicted, and the government and the department should be concerned that once teachers get comfortable working online, they might just jump ship to an online education platform provider that pays more, demands less, and provides more support, further eroding our talent pool and sending even more poorly prepared students out into the workforce. Our children need to be on campus and in the classroom, and if we continue to fail, then we might not even have a choice. Online learning doesn't provide for the social and emotional needs or provide for the social skills development necessary for a healthy and functioning society the way face-to-face learning does. So I want to reiterate that our problems are a cultural problem. We can point the finger at GDOE because of their failings in maintenance, but even as I sit in this house, I can look up and see that 6 of your lights are malfunctioning. Who has taken agency and responsibility to get it fixed? It's always somebody else's problem, and it's so easy to blame others before we check ourselves. So I want to thank you, senators, for listening. Senator Barnett, I want to thank you for having the courage and the integrity to stand your ground and hold a necessary and painful position. If we continue to keep giving our friends a pass rather than demanding excellence and integrity out of them while demonstrating excellence and integrity out of ourselves, the landslides will continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pexa. Vicky Ariola.
Hi, my name is Vicky Ariola. I'm a parent with a child with Down syndrome, and she goes to GW. So when you mention GW, that's also my alma mater. And it really hit me that a friend of mine said, how could you send your kids to that school knowing that there's a rat infestation? And I knew that, but in my head as a parent, I'm saying, oh, you know, the administration's got to be taking care of it, so I'm relying on them. But apparently they haven't, and it's been there since my older children have been at this school. So I'm really happy that we're going to do something about it, but my fear is the online school, and I'm glad all of you agree, and all of you are going to make sure that they're not going to put my daughter online because of her experience last time, and I can speak for other families with children with disabilities. So that's the main thing I was here to speak about. Please, please, no online school for my daughter and for all the kids in special ed. But also I'm surprised we didn't have public health at this table because most of our questions seem to be, they don't have inspectors, they don't have this. So listening to everything today, the biggest problem is procurement. Public health isn't here. It looks like everybody at this table was trying to do something to make sure we're open at the right time. And then I agreed with Senator Perez, who said, why don't we just delay all the schools? And then that comes in with the teacher's contract. I don't know if the governor can do something about that, but if we delay the schools starting, everything comes down to money, really. Everything comes down to money, and we all know that. But that was an option nobody talked about. Nobody brought to the table what the contract for teachers are, and is that a question? Is that a reason why they're not looking at delaying? So I'm just so happy that everybody's agreeing no online, even the teacher who's sitting here, no online. I think when my daughter was trying to do online, a teacher almost quit, and someone who was retiring not because of my daughter, but because of just the whole pressure with online. But I tell you, my daughter was mostly sleeping. Right now, the internet at my house drops all the time. So when the computer freezes, and I'm not paying attention, she's on the counter, on the desk, asleep. So I'm just so happy everything's agreeing with what I'm here to fight for, but we really have to come together and do something. And thank you for this, because we do need more parents coming out, talking about the problems with their school. One of the teachers' classrooms at GW, wires were all over, leaks were coming down, and this is where all the kids with the worst needs were met. They were in that room, and she said, look at my classroom. I said, oh my God, how do you teach the kids with special needs here when you have wires? And she's brought her own extension cords because she can't. So I'm glad this is happening, but we do have to do something about the delays and everything that the parents need. Thank you so much for giving me this time.
Thank you, Mrs. Ariola. I was in that classroom that you're talking about, right? Yeah. So thank you very much for your testimony. Patty Babauta?
Yes, thank you. This was unprepared, but I have a lot to say. The main one I really want to say is I don't understand how GDOE cannot make a list of the schools, what's required, and how much it'll cost. They can use the phase 1, phase 2. It's so generic, it's very broad, very general. This is the same thing that they gave us in our meeting in the Zoom, and I told them this is too general. You're not giving us specific, where does my school stand? What does it need? And a lot of the parents, this is what they're coming to me asking, where exactly is our school and what's happening, what can be done? And so a concrete list of each individual schools would be great to know, and how much is their budget, what needs to be done. I think GDOE is too big of an entity that it needs to be broken down possibly into 3 groups where each group can concentrate maybe like on the northern, the southern schools, and the central schools, and collaborate with them there, because in the meetings they're just everywhere, and it just does not make sense, and the parents are frustrated, actually making child remarks on the comments section. For OMS, they've been working diligently on their own without the support of the central office. I don't know why Phil Tovis wasn't here to speak about the maintenance, because I've been bugging him since 2 years ago about the road fixture for OMS, and I even went to the point of contacting the mayor, working with the mayor and working with DPW and getting the names and everything that Phil Tovis needs. And after I gave him all those information that he asked and requested for, even when they were paving the road right outside of OMS, he just ghosted me, and been ghosting me for the past two years. And this is how it's been for our school administrators. When they want something done, they get ghosted, from the central office, no help. Only this past 2 weeks has the central office been helping OMS, and that's the major concern I just want to bring up, besides a lot of other things. Also, Senator Terlahi, you asked about the schools accepting donations. I know one teacher who just told me over the weekend that she was so irritated with her classroom not having aircon. She was crying to her husband, and her husband wanted to purchase an aircon and put it into her classroom, but they couldn't do that. So I don't know what the board was saying, accepting donations, which is not true. And then the schools definitely needs fumigations regularly. One of our schools, the reason why their phone line is not on is because a rat chewed their phone line. So that's why they don't have any phone connections to be called or to be able to receive calls. Joe did a very good presentation with these. He says he likes agenda, but I, as a parent, I want to see the agenda written, exactly what they're going to do for the schools, what's going to happen with with Simon Sanchez, what are the deadlines, what if with FBLG as well. We want concrete evidence of and signed what's going to happen with these schools, instead of just these daydreams of what's going to be happen and what is this 14 million actually going to be put to use. As a parent, I want to know. And in the end, the parents are the consumers, and GDOE is are the service to us, and the parents have. If our governor does not want to move fast enough to get our public schools up to par, then maybe we should look into school choice. And I've shared already many times about the school choice right? And that will help, that will hurt our government, our public school system if we do make this move, but it's something that I think we should do if the governor does not want to help fix her own schools, fix the school, the government school. So school choice, I think, should be looked at again. Also, I'm so sorry. You know, for the private schools, they were getting help by FEMA. FEMA was paying, it was with ND, they were paying staff to come in and clean. How come our schools can't do that? Like, how come FEMA cannot pay the people that comes in to clean up the school mess, but they're doing that for the private schools? You know what I mean? They would have a list of people who came onto the campus, and they would get stipends from FEMA, is what I heard from the board of ND. And I think that's all. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Patty. I'm sorry, specifically, so I can follow up with Mr. Tova's Ocean View Middle School, you said the road?
The road, yes, the road is like a roller coaster.
Right, yes.
Yeah, I did everything. I went to the mayor's office, I spoke with Vice Mayor.
Are you trying to get this, the entrance to the school?
Repave?
Okay.
That would be nice. That was my first initial, but now there's a lot of other things. Like I even asked Mark Mendiola for the backhoe to help with our soccer field, and then he left. He took off and left me. Still.
Thank you, Patty. Thank you for your support and also for your testimony. Mrs. Beausoleil?
Good afternoon. I think it's afternoon now, right?
Yes.
Well, afternoon. My name is Colette Beausoleil, and I teach physics, robotics, and pre-engineering at John F. Kennedy High School. I came to Guam to teach school in 1989. Mr. Barnett, Senator Barnett, was on the radio at that time. With the exception of my first 4 years at Interagency High School, I've been at John F. Kennedy High School through the closure, the year of double session with GW, and 2 years at Tiedzen before the opening of the new facility, which, as Senator Brown noted, was permitted, inspected, certified for occupancy, with structures currently present and found lacking. For today's purposes, it does little good to spend my time exploring how we got to this point. That study and response and systemic repair is best left for another day. Today, we all must work together to make sure our students have schools to attend as soon as possible. Like everyone involved in community leadership, government leaders, business leaders, school leaders, I know that it is essential for us to maintain an educated community. Essential, not nice to have, essential. We also know that an educated community can't happen without strong public schools. To that end, we dedicate our energies. I wish I had some hard data from GDOE to share. I don't. I do have more than 35 years of experience in classrooms and hallways with students and colleagues. I would like to share what I feel to be the most tragic loss from our recent COVID closures and the absence that face-to-face learning creates. I am not going to talk about the academic learning loss, though that is real and it is serious. With time and hard work, I know we can help our students to achieve the academic standards we have set. What is on my mind today, and what I want to get you all thinking about, is a bigger loss, and that's the loss of social learning. A major part of teachers' daily responsibilities deals with teaching students socially acceptable behaviors, from kindergarten through graduation. In fact, managing relationships in the classroom is a critical skill, sometimes called classroom management, but it is really helping everyone to learn to relate appropriately with one another and with the authority figure in the room. Let me give a dramatic example that kept me up at night. When students returned to our schools, we had to cope with serious, even criminal behaviors to an extent we have never seen before. And I'll remind you, I've been in Guam public schools for 34 years. Groups of abusive malcontents felt they could take over our hallways. They created such dangerous conditions that teachers and other students went out of their way to avoid parts of our school. These students, I know, felt completely disenfranchised. They had no sense of belonging, no pride in our school, no boundaries that they recognized. Why? The void that we created by their prolonged absence and isolation from the physical school environment stunted their social and emotional growth. Schools nurture civilized behavior. I thank God for the professional team at our school, the school aides, the faculty, administration, custodians, maintenance, everyone. We have worked doggedly to address this problem. And because we care so deeply about all of our students, we will change the climate at JFK and through our actions become a better school than before the pandemic. And we were very good before the pandemic. I am sure of it. We feel so strongly about this need that we have included it as a fundamental pillar in our recently approved accreditation action plan. And still on the subject of the social learning loss, I want to talk about students who simply tuned out and in some cases dropped out. Presently, I arguably teach some of the brightest, most motivated students at my school. I recently attended the graduation of a student from Northwestern University, where I received a very high honor. 2 students at that university's graduation were from Guam. One of them spoke on the stage that I was seated on. So teaching these most motivated students, I still struggled to hold on to them, to keep them with me. Even with parent and guardian support, some students just couldn't cope. And I think we heard that from these other people that spoke recently. Educators saw issues that ran the entire tragic spectrum of emotional damage for kids, from depression and suicidal thoughts during online instruction to wild, beyond control behavior when we return to our campus. The positive relationships that we create in physical classrooms, the synergistic flow of energy, cannot be replicated through an online environment. This we now know. We did the experiment. While the pandemic, a worldwide catastrophe, gave us little choice, our current situation is different. We must recognize this. Of course, no one endorses placing students in unsafe conditions. I can regale you with tales of catching snakes in the former chemistry room of the old JFK. I can talk to you about dead rats under the podium of my classroom. I can talk to you about beetle nut clogged drinking fountains in the old school. I can talk to you of horrific conditions that make great stories. But please, let's look at that list, the official checklist that enthusiastic inspectors are employing at schools. Where did it come from? What are the specifics? Everyone should know these. Are all of those demerit items serious enough to take kids away from their classrooms? Can some things, like light showing around a door, be addressed later? Curtain rods? There must be a more targeted, sensible approach to solve the original problem. Long-term grievous neglect, and I exclude JFK in that, because that school has not been neglected. The issues being identified, many of them were permitted and approved for occupancy when that building was built. Operating from first principles, let's address what are truly unsafe conditions: the sewage and plumbing matters, electrical hazards, and structural failures. Absolutely. Ensure the restrooms are clean and provided with tissue, soap, hand towels, or electrical dryers. This is essential. This mass closing of schools for questionable offenses feels contrary to the goal of supporting teachers and students, and I certainly don't believe that was your intention. Thank you.
Thank you. Derek Santos? Little button on the, there you go.
Good afternoon, Senators. Thank you again for staying back. I know that we started off with a packed house, but I guess this is what we have right now. So I was going to keep this brief, but I do want to share with you, I am the principal of Inaran Middle School, formerly Inaran High School, and where she was from, or she was teaching. And I want to share with you, our school is about almost 50 years old. And everything that's been compounded, all that, especially with this passing of the storm, has made it very difficult at my school and many other schools around the island. And I want to say for the record, I'm not against that law. That public health law is long awaited. It's needed, frankly, and we do need to hold ourselves accountable. When I say ourselves, I'm talking about DOE, the legislature, the governor, everyone that has to take part in these 41 schools that we have. My concern, again, is not the law itself, but the timing, because I want to advocate for our special needs. I've been trying to plan on how we're going to try and teach our kids, because online will not work. The problem with online is not the kids that get on, it's the kids that don't. They lack all that, they lose out on everything else. And those who are on, they're fortunate because they have internet power and parental support. The issue here, guys, is that we have only 3 weeks left. We need to make decisions at DOE, and we are stuck with having to understand, do we do Zoom, do we do Google Meet, do we do online, where do we go, because our teachers aren't allowed on campus. Only those who are going to clean up the school and fix the issues with public health. So we're constantly trying to figure out how best to move forward. The law is not the issue. The timing is, obviously, especially with the storm passing. So that is a concern for us. I don't want my kids to stay online, to go online. I want my kids to come in. Now, although half my campus, all the air cons are blown off the roof, the other half are still there. So can I bring my kids in? Yes, I can. But the public health would not allow. Why? Because we will not pass. I am a phase 3 school. So definitely a lot of things that need to be addressed by the ARP funds and all that. And it will be. But this law is not the issue, more so than the timing of it. I am asking that this body thinks about putting a moratorium, but still hold our feet to the fire. Still hold these every 2-week meetings and see where we're at. Still hold the department accountable for how it's spending its funds. Do all that you guys do, because that's your job, your accountability. Everybody brings up all these wonderful ideas, and they're good. But I think bringing people to the table, like public health and everyone, so that we can come to an understanding, because 3 weeks is all we have left to let parents know whether they have to find babysitting, whether their kid is going to be on this school because the other kid goes to another school that's older. I mean, they have issues. I'm getting calls and calls and calls. My staff are, and I don't have the answers, not the right ones anyways. I have only suggestions of what could happen, possibly happen. Only this body can decide on what can happen, so that the fate of the island can start deciding how they're going to start taking care of their kids, whether they're going to go to public school, private school, move them online or whatnot, because some of them have multiple kids. They go to elementary, middle, and high. What if the high school kid goes to school, but the elementary can't because they're shut down? There are just too many variables that's hindering us from making a proper planning, especially the special needs kids. I don't want them to be online. I need them to come in. I want them, my teachers are eager for them to come in. But the law is not the issue. It's everything else, like public health. They don't have enough inspectors. They don't have all the things that they need to make it happen. I mean, I have one of my colleagues, the entire school is without power because I don't know if the transformer, the box blew up or whatever, but the entire school is without power. The classrooms are clean. The mold is being taken care of. There's enough desks, chairs, all that, but they can't function. So they have to start planning. But how can they plan if the other schools that they're supposed to be planning with is a phase 3 school as well? So they'll be closed. But if we can start planning properly, it will have to depend on what the decisions are with this body when it comes up to either putting a moratorium on this law. Because again, the law is not the issue. I think it's far overdue that we have it. The problem is the timing, especially with this typhoon that just compounded everything else. Now, with respect to repeal, no, I I disagree. Whoever shared that with you, Senator Terlai, it's not the repeal. But we do still need to hold everyone accountable for every cent that is being spent. Senator Blas brings that up. Where's the money going to come from? All of these are good questions. But the parents that sat here, they need answers. Yes, our answers are a little bit vague because we don't know whether we're going to go right or left. But the decisions need to be made soon. And our management team, we can come up with good plans if we know where we stand. The problem is that, again, if we have to continue on with our current process, our current move forward, we are not. We are stuck in whether we close this school, where do our kids go here? And then transportation, busing. How do we meet with bus drivers so they know that, okay, these kids have to go to this school? There's a lot of things moving parts. And I'm asking that this body consider that we put a moratorium on this, on holding the timelines and all that public health, because we are moving in the right direction. However, we cannot open our schools. I'm a phase 3. There's no way that I can open my school on time. And my parents are asking, so are we going to be online for 3 months? No. We have to prepare for the whole year. The whole year. That's how long it is. Maybe some of the phase 1 schools, they can do 2 months. But for the phase 3 schools, most of them probably go longer than that. And that's going to affect the entire island. Again, with all due respect, Senators, I just want everybody that is a part of this process, the public health, senators, GDOE, Attorney General, whoever needs to be a part of this, to come up with a solution that would benefit the whole island. Because again, we need to get our kids in. We can work double sessions out. We can do that. You mentioned earlier, Senator Duenas, about half the campus. Yes, but if all the campus is part of this public health inspection, then we can't open. We can't bring them in. But I can work with 50%. Some of my colleagues can work with 50% for the meantime. And then when we actually have the contractors come into place, we can start cordoning off areas that they're going to affect and start making plans for that as well. But this law is not the issue with respect to its intent. It's the timeliness, it's hard. And we need to make decisions soon. So I'm hoping that this body can consider that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Santos, for your testimony. And I agree with you, the law is not the issue, and that's why we're just going to keep moving forward. I think to just address a lot of your concerns, I know that Public Health has inspected parts of a school that are being used and not examined or inspected other parts, just based on what I'm hearing from other
Well, the issue, sir, I'll just share with some of my colleagues, okay, just from what we talk about.
Sure.
It's not like a whole building is done. I have like 2 classrooms that in this building that can work, but the other classrooms, so it's not like you can cordon off just this one building. I have to move my kids around because this aircon works, this aircon works. It's in different buildings though.
Right.
So I can't just cordon off one side of half the school campus and then, okay, we only use this. We have to say, okay, you use room 25. You guys can use room 8. You guys, so we have to spread it out because the ACs are down, tiles ceiling tiles are falling or mold, or all those other issues that public health are hitting us with, which again is supposed to be. Right. The problem again is that at least my kids come to school versus them getting online. I am not more concerned about those who are online versus those who don't. If you look at the data, if they do get you data, 50% of the population don't get on. It's hard to find. And when they do get on, they don't pay attention. They don't understand. It's hard even for our teachers.
And I don't even have service at EPAN. I can't even imagine in Milan. No, but sir, all of your points are very valid, and I commend you for your creative style of managing with the limited resources that you have due to the decades of neglect at the schools. But I just want to reiterate on the record that when we talked about online and even relative to phase 3 schools, now online is just being used as a stopgap. We're not going back to COVID. And I don't want to say it's apples and oranges, and I did want to kind of address what Mrs. Beausoleil said, but the pandemic and the social, mental health issues that were compounded by online learning, it's a little different now because back in the pandemic, we all felt like we were going to die because of that isolation. And so there were these different mental health and social issues that were compounded and exacerbated that isolation by online learning. But this is a completely different situation in that we are only using a short-term learning mode change to accommodate this long-term goal, to include the Phase 3 schools, right? So you're saying you're preparing for the whole year, but what GDOE is saying is that we're trying to get as many schools up to par to be inspected, to be passed, to be open, so that we can have students from interlaw, middle, double session, right? Theoretically, that's the intent.
If the law,
of course,
again,
right, yes.
It all has to do with that, the timing of the law.
Yes.
It's not a bad law. It's a good one. It's
No.
long overdue.
Thank you, sir.
It's just making sure, sir, there's 12 Phase 3 schools. 12. I'm not talking about one or two. There's
I know
12.
my children go to one of them.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
the
so
au pairs.
what I'm saying is that, again, I would rather these kids come to school than to put them online, even if it's for a semester or so. It's long, it's too much. They've lost a lot of education. And so we need to plan properly at DOE, but we need to know where we're going to go with this.
No, I agree, and we're all asking all the questions you're asking, I'm asking, all the parents around the island are asking, but the problem is, as we get closer to the opening of schools, there are so many things happening. If you heard the testimony, right? I mean, we've got schools that are Phase 2 that could easily become Phase 1, and you know, and I'm going to be optimistic because we are really I'm going to put on that polite pressure with the governor and public health to really kind of see this through, because I'm telling you, it looks dire now, but if you look at the number of schools in Phase 1 and the number of schools that can go from Phase 2 to Phase 1, I think that if we hit everything right, we could end up really pulling a win out of this. And again, my mind is just on the long-term goal.
I understand, sir, and again, I applaud you for the long term. The issue is that parents need to plan now.
Of course, yes, totally. And I
so
know that the parents out
and
there.
just so you know, parents, our teachers are parents.
Yes.
They too need to try and figure out who's going to watch if I have to go online. And if I'm not allowed on my school to teach, where am I going to teach from? You know, all that stuff. So there are issues that are still, it's very big, sir, and I think we need to make sure that we have the best interest of everyone on the island in mind.
That's why we're doing what we're doing, sir. Thank you for your testimony.
Okay, thank you.
Esta, viva en el Alahan. It is 1:27. The committee will continue to accept written statements on today's hearing within 10 business days from today, which may be mailed to my office on the second floor of the Guam Congress Building at 163 Chalan Santo Papa in Agatnia. You may also send your statements to us at malfunction@guamlegislature.org. I want to thank you for your attendance and all the hard work that's being done to bring our schools into compliance with Public Law 37-4. Again, this public hearing is adjourned at 1:28 Chamorro Standard Time. Guahosi Senador Chris Malfunction Barnett. Está. Adios.